A breaking piece of news with regard to Roy Moore allegations, Al Franken fallout, plus CNN does its best to go after Trump on Russia and falls directly on its face, as does the entire media. I'll tell you about that one. Plus the mailbag. I'm Ben Shapiro. This is The Ben Shapiro Show. So the news coming fast and furious today. If my energy level seems a little bit down, it's just because I was back from San Francisco. I was there last night doing Sam Harris's podcast. It was really entertaining and fun. Sam's a really good guy. And while we disagree strenuously on issues regarding religion, we have a lot of agreement about how arguments are to be approached. And so it was a really entertaining and good time. That podcast should be up, I think, in the next couple of weeks sometime. So you should listen for that. But I want to get to all the latest news, particularly a piece of breaking news with regard to Roy Moore's chief accuser. There are really two chief accusers in the Roy Moore case. One is a woman named Lee Korfman, who says when she was 14 years old that Roy Moore attempted to molest her, and a woman named Beverly Young Nelson, who accused Roy Moore of basically putting her in a car and almost attempting to rape her when she was 16 years old. She's the one, of course, who came out with the yearbook, the signed yearbook. We'll talk about a breaking piece of news in that case that really throws Beverly Young Nelson into credibility crisis. We'll talk about that in just a second. But first, I want to say thank you to our sponsors over at Quip. So let me give you a challenge. Find a gift that's affordable, practical, Instagram worthy, and on top of that list, I will tell you, is Quip, the electric toothbrush that looks like it was designed by Apple without the high price. So Quip is an electric toothbrush. You can carry it with you on the road because it doesn't have one of those expensive and heavy chargers. It works. It's very slim package. You stick a battery in it, it's ready to go. They will ship you new brush heads on a regular basis when you subscribe, and it gives you a really clean mouth. I mean, I can tell you that Quip works fantastically well for me. My wife is also using Quip now. Quip makes sure that the new brush head thing is really important for me because I'm really lazy and stupid in things like this, and that means that I rarely bother to think about the brush head on an electric toothbrush unless it's actually shipped to my house, and then I don't have to think about it at all. That's what Quip is good for. Quip comes with a mount that goes right on your mirror, fits seamlessly into your daily routine, and they have that optional subscription plan I'm talking about, delivering new brush heads on a dentist-recommended 3-month schedule for just $5, including free shipping worldwide. Just in time for the holidays, Quip is the ideal size and price to give anyone on your list. The Quip electric toothbrush is featured in just about every gift guide this year, from GQ to Forbes and even Gwyneth Paltrow's Magical Goop. Yes, I'm serious. Quip is backed by a network of over 10,000 dental professionals, including dentists, hygienists, and dental solutions. It starts at just $25. And right now, when you go to getquip.com/Ben, that's getquip.com/Ben, you get your first refill pack absolutely free with a Quip electric toothbrush. That's getquip.com/Ben. Again, getquip.com/Ben, and you get your first refill pack free, and the Quip toothbrush starts at just $25. So very affordable, a lot cheaper than it would be if you went to the store and got a more expensive, less good one. So go to getquip.com/Ben and make sure that your mouth stays clean. Okay, so the breaking piece of news this morning is that Beverly Young Nelson, you remember her, we played significant portions of her audio when she first broke news, was sitting next to the execrable Gloria Allred, that she was allegedly molested by Roy Moore, the Senate Republican candidate in Alabama, when she was 16 years old. So all the way back in 1977, she claimed that Roy Moore had met her at a restaurant, was hitting on her, wrote her a note in her yearbook, and then one night when she didn't have a ride home, he offered to give her a ride, brought her around the back in the car, locked the door, and then proceeded to try to molest her. That was her claim. And she trotted out this yearbook as proof that she knew Roy Moore, because Moore said he never met her. He didn't know who she was. So she trotted out this yearbook. And Moore said it's a forgery. And she said it's not a forgery. And actually, Gloria Allred went even further. Gloria Allred said the entire thing is genuine, and the entire thing was written by Roy Moore. Well, a very bad thing happened on the way to Beverly Young Nelson's credibility, okay? And that is that Beverly Young Nelson admitted in an interview with ABC News that she wrote part of the inscription. Now, she didn't write, according to her, the actual note. She didn't write Roy Moore's actual signature, but she did write the date and the place underneath. Right? Now, the reason that this is a problem, I'll show you what she had to say. The reason this is a problem is because if they had just come out at the very beginning and they had said, Roy Moore wrote this note, and then to remind myself of where this was, I wrote the date and the place underneath, right? Just like you would on the back of a photo, everybody would have gone, oh, okay. Especially because there's now a second note that Roy Moore wrote a graduation card to a 17-year-old that looks very much like this note, right? The signatures look pretty much the same. But because people were automatically saying this was a forgery, and because Gloria Allred refused to turn it over to any sort of impartial third-hand source, or secondhand source, or refused to turn over to any sort of handwriting expert. Because of all that, this now throws the entire story in jeopardy. Here's Beverly Young Nelson talking about this and admitting that she wrote the little inscription under the note.
Young's proof that she knew more? Her yearbook with this inscription. But Moore and his supporters have called into question that inscription, noting the writing under the signature appears to be different.
Let's look at Beverly Nelson. Everybody knows her yearbook is a forgery.
Nelson says she did make notes to the inscription, but the message was all Roy Moore.
Beverly, he signed your yearbook.
He did sign it.
And you made some notes underneath.
Yes.
Okay, so how, number one, does the GMA reporter who's reporting this not ask why? When were the notes made? What were the specific notes made? Right? It says the date and the place, this steakhouse that apparently she worked. Now, does this throw the entire story into severe credibility crisis? Not quite, because Roy Moore said he never knew the woman. He said that the restaurant didn't exist. The signatures, again, look the same. They should submit it now to an independent handwriting expert. They should have already. Gloria Allred is a hack. It's unbelievable to me that Gloria Allred didn't submit this in the first place. But there is a tendency to run too far with the story. So I'm seeing headlines today. There's a headline from Breitbart, bombshell. She admits she forged the signature. No, she did not admit she forged the signature. What you just saw is the entirety of the tape. Right? The actual headline over at Breitbart right now, I want to make sure that I don't steer you bum on what exactly their headline is. Bombshell. Moore accuser admits forging yearbook. Silence for weeks as evidence of hoax grew. Right? Moore admits forging yearbook. She did not admit forging the yearbook. She admitted to writing a note underneath the signature. So again, this throws her credit. Two things can be true at once. One, her credibility can have serious problems now because she didn't admit this from the start and because Gloria Allred openly stated the entire thing was written by this woman. But it's also true that she didn't admit to forging the entire note. She specifically says she didn't forge the entire note in this particular element. So I don't know why people have to lie about I really don't know why people have to lie about what exactly she admitted in order to throw this woman's credibility into crisis. I don't really understand how that's the case. It's confusing to me. But again, it does have a real credibility problem, and there are going to be a lot of people who hang their hats on this peg. Now, again, she's not the only accuser against Roy Moore. There's another accuser who says she was molested when she was 14. That was the one that was tracked down by the Washington Post. There are a bunch of other women who say that Roy Moore was dating them and trying to kiss them and hit on them when they were under the age of 18. There were many of those women. There were reports that he was banned from the local food court at the mall. But all of that said, is this a problem for Beverly Young Nelson? It is, but it shows the dishonesty of our politics, number one, that Gloria Allred didn't admit this stuff up front, and number two, that GMA didn't bother to press the questions, and number three, that people are now saying that this discredits the entirety of the signature and the note, because it doesn't, okay? So all of those things can be true at once. It can also be true that this doesn't really change some of the underlying other allegations. People are using this to dismiss all the allegations. All the other allegations are now dismissed because there is this problem with Beverly Young Nelson's credibility. And that seems to me overkill as well. So with all that said, I'm trying to give you the most intellectually honest take I can. It's a serious problem for her credibility. It's a serious problem for Gloria Allred, who once again demonstrates to the world that she is terrible at her job and is a hack lawyer and a troll. But it doesn't carry all the heavy weight that I think a lot of people want it to carry. The weight that says that Roy Moore is now off the hook. I think that's a little bit of a stretch. All that being said, Roy Moore is going to win. There's no question that Roy Moore is going to win this election now. He's going to win the election by 8 to 10 points. He was already winning the election. These charges had started to fade in the public memory, and not only in the public memory, but in the minds of a lot of conservatives, because conservatives have made the concerted effort now, the concerted move, that they have decided that when the initial attack on somebody like Roy Moore is initially over an issue where they agree with Roy Moore, then all further attacks will be attributed to malice, bad motivations, and fraud. Right? It's not just with Roy Moore. This is true for Donald Trump, too. When the initial attacks on Donald Trump were suggestions that his right-wing views made him unpalatable, then when there were later suggestions that were of a more personal nature, everybody just chalked that up to media animus for Donald Trump. The same thing is true of Joe Arpaio. Joe Arpaio in Arizona is now apparently considering a run for the Senate. He told the Daily Beast that he is seriously considering running for the U.S. Senate to replace Jeff Flake. He'd obviously have an upper hand in the primaries, specifically because of all the media attacks on him, because he had to be pardoned by President Trump. And that means that a lot of people on the right think that he's a martyr to the cause, right? That he's somebody who is anti-illegal immigration. He is somebody who used to dress up his prisoners in pink outfits. We like that sort of stuff since we don't like crime and we don't like illegal immigration. And the initial media attacks were on that stuff, not on corruption in the Maricopa County Sheriff's Office, which apparently did exist. They paid a $3.5 million settlement to a local newspaper after trying to arrest newspaper reporters for reporting on a subpoena. But all of that put to the side, one of the things that unites the sort of feeling for Trump and Roy Moore and Joe Arpaio is this feeling like if the initial attack on them was over their conservatism or over their right-wing views, then all further attacks must be discredited based on the malice of the media. And the media doesn't help its own case when it doesn't press Beverly Young Nelson for a better explanation of why they didn't come out with this fact earlier, why it was weeks before they came out with the fact that the last two lines of this thing, at the very least, according to Beverly Young Nelson, were written by Beverly Young Nelson. So, yeah, I think that Republicans are being a little disingenuous if they say that all allegations against Joe Arpaio are false because the initial attack on Joe Arpaio was wrong, or all the allegations against Roy Moore are false because the initial attack on Roy Moore was wrong over the Ten Commandments stuff. Look, the fact is that Roy Moore says a lot of stuff that is inappropriate. He says a lot of stuff that is bad. But because, again, I think that you basically have 10 seconds in the public eye to make people's minds up about what exactly you are, that once their minds have been made up, it's almost impossible to change them. And this is actually what the social science data tends to suggest. That when you walk down the street, you make a decision within the first 10 seconds of meeting someone whether you like them or not. And it's very difficult to change your opinion. The same is true in politics. The first impression is the lasting impression that people have about you with regard to politics. The first impression about Roy Moore is that he was a very religious guy who took the Ten Commandments seriously and wasn't going to bow to judicial supremacy. And that image has basically carried him through all of the credibility questions about him. It carries him through saying ridiculous things, right? In just a second, I'm going to play you a quote by Roy Moore himself that if any Democrat said it, the right would be going nuts. But the right doesn't care because anything that is used to attack Roy Moore is now being seen as bad faith. Here is a little bit of the tape that I'm talking about. Roy Moore was asked by The Guardian about Ronald Reagan once saying that the Russians were the evil empire and the focus of evil in the modern world. And here was Roy Moore's answer.
He said that Russia was the focus of evil in the modern world.
You could say that very well about America, couldn't you?
Do you think?
Well, we promote a lot of bad things, you know?
Like?
Same-sex marriage.
That's the very argument that Vladimir Putin makes.
Well, then maybe Putin is right. Maybe he's more kin to me than I know.
Okay, so if any Democrat said that, right, that America is the focus of modern evil in this world, and then they cited, say, not same-sex marriage, but low taxes, and then they said maybe Putin is right, we'd lose our minds. But Roy Moore says that it's totally fine, again, because people have made up their mind about Roy Moore already. The same is true. There's a quote, apparently, and I don't want to put too much stake in this quote. I'll read it to you, and then I'll tell you why. According to the LA Times, Roy Moore in September was asked about when he last thought America was great, because he's run very much on the Make America Great Again kind of bandwagon. And Moore apparently acknowledged the nation's ugly history vis-a-vis race and racism, and then he said, I think it was great at the time when families were united. Even though we had slavery, they cared for one another. Our families were strong. Our country had a direction. So the way the media has run with this is saying that Roy Moore says the last time America was great is when there was slavery. I don't think that's what Roy Moore is saying, but it's certainly badly articulated. It's another one of these cases where, because we distrust the media on the right, we want the entire context. We don't trust them to tell the truth. And this is just another example of why that is. So that distrust of the media allows people to take a molehill and make it into a mountain. In the case of Beverly Young Nelson and all the rest of the accusers, it allows them the ability to hang their hat on pegs that are not particularly sturdy. Again, does this call Beverly Young Nelson herself into question? Absolutely. Does it call Gloria Allred into question? Absolutely. And I will only follow where the evidence leads. When she first came out, I said I thought this was very credible. I think it's a lot less credible now that you have this statement that she wrote in the yearbook herself. Do I think it completely destroys her credibility? No, I'm not willing to go that far, but it's a problem for her. That said, for people to say this destroys all of the allegations against Roy Moore is an overkill that I think is pretty shameless. Okay, before I go any further, and I'll talk a little bit about Al Franken. First, I want to say thank you to our sponsors over at USCCA. So right now, do you remember that gun giveaway I told you about a little bit earlier this week? Well, if you want in, you really do have to hurry. The USCCA wants to give you 4 free chances to win a brand new gun, plus all the ammo you will need to break it in. Entry is simple, easy, and free, but it's almost over. Go to defendmyfamilynow1.com. It's defendmyfamilynow, the number 1.com to lock in your entry. This is your last chance to register. If you win, you'll get $1,000 for a brand new gun and the ammo of your choice. Remember, it's not just one gun. You get 4 chances to win. Not only is the USCCA on a mission to make sure every responsible gun owner is educated, trained, and insured, they like giving away guns to law-abiding people, because law-abiding people with guns are able to defend themselves in their country. You're running out of time. Don't miss your last shot at getting that gun you really want for Christmas. Hurry over to defendmyfamilynow1.com to see which gun is waiting for you. Defendmyfamilynow1.com. So if you were waiting for the Red Ryder BB gun, but now you've upgraded to an actual AR, then defendmyfamilynow1.com is the place to go. Go ahead and check that out. Okay, so while the Republicans are having all of this hubbub over Moore and whether Moore is guilty or innocent, and Joe Arpaio and Trent Franks, so Trent Franks stepped down yesterday. He says he's going to step down from Congress because 2 former female staffers are now complaining of sexual harassment. Apparently, Franks said that he and his wife have been struggling to get pregnant and that he had discussed surrogacy with 2 women in the workplace and it caused them distress. I'm confused as to why that exactly would be sexual harassment unless he said, I want to put a baby in you, in which case it is sexual harassment. But if it was, you work here, I trust you, you seem like a nice gal, have you ever considered surrogacy? I'm not sure why that's sexual harassment per se. Like, I just, maybe the power imbalance, but that doesn't seem like typical sexual harassment to me, so I'm not sure we're getting the entire story on that. While all that breaks down on the Republican side, the Democrats are preening. The Democrats are walking around preening. We are just the moral guideposts for the United States. We are the most moral of the moral. This is the new shtick that Democrats have been trying out on a regular basis. Yesterday, Al Franken did a bad job with it, right? He tried to grab the moral high ground, but that failed because Al Franken wasn't really willing to acknowledge that he'd done anything wrong. Here's what Al Franken said yesterday in saying that he was going to resign. Not that he did resign yesterday, but that he would resign in short order. If Moore gets elected and is not thrown out of the Senate, I think there's a significant possibility that Franken actually retracts his retirement and says, you know what? I'm going to stick around now. If the Republicans aren't going to clean house, I'm certainly not going to leave over this. Here's what Moore said yesterday. Franken said yesterday.
Nevertheless, today I am announcing that in the coming weeks, I will be resigning as a member of the United States Senate. I, of all people, am aware that there is some irony in the fact that I am leaving while a man who has bragged on tape about his history of sexual assault sits in the Oval Office, and a man who has repeatedly preyed on young girls campaigns for the Senate with the full support of his party.
Okay, so there he does. He also called himself a champion for women and said that the women who were accusing him had gotten it all wrong, but he's stepping down anyway. It's hard for you to claim the moral high ground when you're blaming the women, right? I thought the whole shtick here is that women always have to be believed unless you're Al Franken. And Franken himself, his accusers are angry at him, and I think for good reason. One of the Franken accusers, she comes out and she says she's just appalled that Franken won't own up to the situation.
And so, is there anything that for you would be justice?
I have to say that I'm so sad and appalled at his lack of response and him owning up to what he did. I feel that he just keeps passing the buck and making it out to be something that we took his behavior the wrong way, or we misconstrued something. Or
so it's hard for them to grab the moral high ground in any case while they're busy giving it away, but they're trying to grab the moral high ground anyway, right? They're trying to say that Republicans don't understand the plight of women, but we Democrats, we understand the plight of women. Now, this is all cynical pandering. I mean, what they're actually attempting to do is flip the script so they can go after Moore and Trump, right? That's the whole goal here, is that okay, we'll sacrifice one of ours, and then we'll use their bodies as a bridge in order to climb the ramparts of Trump and Roy Moore. That's the whole goal here. And you see Chris Matthews did the clearest and dumbest version of this. So last night on his show, he got on the show, got on my say, and he talks about Democrats are the greatest people in the entire world. They're fantastic. Go.
Jason, your thoughts about the possibly positive education that the public are. I don't know how you can avoid the education in this. The worst you can say about the Democrats is they're too pure. And that's the stupid thing to say, but that's the worst thing you can say about it. These guys set too high a standard for public office.
Yeah, that's clearly the worst thing you can say about Democrats. They're too pure. That's the only thing you can say. I mean, The preening, just self-aggrandizing stupidity of this nonsense. That the only thing, Monica Lewinsky's dress disagrees. Okay? Ted Kennedy's sexual assault victims disagree. The worst you can say about Democrats is that they're too pure, but this is their new routine. We have the moral high ground, and you can see how cynical this is, right? Democratic Representative Kathleen Rice, she comes out and she says, you know, really the guy who should resign here is, of course, Trump. Trump is the one who should really go.
Now, although Democrats, our leadership came to this issue a little late, they did call on the resignations that have happened. And we need the Republicans to do the same thing. We need Paul Ryan to stand up and be the leader of his party. I know it's difficult for him to do that when the standard bearer of the Republican Party for right now is the President of the United States. And we know his history with this issue of harassment. So my hope and my call is for Paul Ryan and the Republican leadership to get with the program and start forcing people out.
Why shouldn't he resign today like Franken did, if you're being consistent?
I have said before that he should. I don't think that's going to happen.
Right, that's the cynical move the Democrats are making, but they're claiming that they have the moral high ground while they're doing it. Again, two things can be true, that Franken probably should go, and also the Democrats are using this for cynical reasons. But the preening is a little much, right? I mean, the Democrats proclaiming themselves on loan from God is pretty astonishing. Nancy Pelosi did that as well yesterday. She extended it, right? Not only are Nancy Pelosi was defending Al Franken until 5 seconds ago and John Conyers until 5 seconds ago. Not only does it turn out that the Democrats have a direct pipeline to God when it comes to sexual harassment, they also have a direct pipeline to God when it comes to legitimizing the children of illegal immigrants who came here when they were kids.
We're not going to turn this country into a reign of terror, of domestic enforcement, and have the DACA, the dreamers, pay that price. But I'm optimistic. I always have been. God is with us on this. Our country is great. We know that greatness springs from the vitality that newcomers bring to our country.
God is with us. Do you understand? They're so holy now. Don't you see the holiness that they have in getting rid of Al Franken has now translated over to everything, including DACA and the killing of human babies in the womb until the 9th month. And it's just amazing how this has happened. So before everybody jumps on their high horse and talks about how the Democrats they're holy and now they're all wonderful and they're too pure, as Chris Matthews says, yeah, not so much. Okay, so I want to talk a little bit about media malfeasance. This is an amazing story. So CNN reported this apparent bombshell, and they got it totally wrong. I'll explain all of it to you in just a second. But first, I want to say thank you to our sponsor over at Man Crates. So this is one of my favorite sponsors, mancrates.com. It is the best gift that you can get for any man in your family. It's great for dads, it's great for sons, it's great for husbands. It's great for any man in your family who really is into anything from whiskey appreciation to grill master to sports stuff. Here's what it is. It's a special, basically, gift package that comes in either an ammo crate or in an actual wooden crate with an engraved pry thing, with an engraved crowbar. God, I'm out of it today. With an engraved crowbar, and you can actually pry open the crate yourself. It's super ennobling. It makes you feel like a man. It feels like you're King Arthur pulling the sword out of the stone, but instead you're actually pulling a crate of whiskey out, which is pretty amazing. They cover over 100 hand-curated gift collections for every type of guy, from the rugged outdoorsman to the sports fanatic, everything in between. As I said last time, I got an entire set of poker chips from Man Crates. I immediately gave them to one of my friends who will actually use it because I think I will only end up playing poker at his house. But it makes a fantastic gift, and it's hilarious, it's fun, it's something that your loved one will get a kick out of. It's great for Christmas or Hanukkah. Or any other special event. They have thousands of 5-star reviews. Every Man Crate comes with a high 5 guarantee. Own the holidays. Go mancrates.com/Ben to get 5% off your order. 5% off your order when you go to mancrates.com/Ben. That's mancrates.com/Ben. 5% off your order. And again, I get such a kick out of these. I really do get a kick out of these gifts. They're really fun. Go over to mancrates.com right now. Check it out. It'll solve all of your gift-giving needs. Okay, so here is the story from CNN. And this just shows you want to know why so many people are skeptical of the media, even on things like Roy Moore. You cannot count out the fact that the media are willing to jump over any barrier in order to get Republicans. They really are. And so when you ask, when the left looks at us and they say on the right, how could you possibly not just credit the media with great reporting when they report something? It's because within 3 hours, half of this stuff gets discredited. Half is a little much, but a certain percentage of the stuff gets discredited. So, for example, There was a report from CNN, and the report from CNN said that on September 4th, there was an email that was sent to the Trump administration, to Donald J. Trump, to Donald Trump Jr., to other members of the administration, and that this email had a key code, a decryption key for WikiLeaks that had not yet been released publicly. That's a big scandal. If it turns out, then that's one step removed from actual collusion, right? If it turns out that the WikiLeaks people, at the behest of the Russian government, sent a decryption key to the Trump administration, the Trump campaign, and that the Trump campaign used it in order to go in and spy on Hillary Clinton's emails before those things were released publicly, that would look a lot like collusion, would it not? It turns out every element of the story is bullcrap, every single one. So first of all, the email was not sent on September 4th, before the WikiLeaks were leaked. It was sent on September 14th, after they were already public information. You didn't need a decryption key for public information. Number two, there's no evidence that Donald Trump Jr. or Donald Trump ever saw this email. Number three, there's no evidence that the email itself is legit, that it didn't just come from some spammer. So the way that this originally was run, the way the original headline was run, was something like, I want to find, if I can, the actual headline. CNN report, Trump and Trump Jr. got September 2016 email with decryption key. Right, here's what David Wright from CNN tweeted. He tweeted, candidate Donald Trump Jr., and others in the Trump org received email in September 2016 offering a decryption key and website address for hacked WikiLeaks documents, according to email provided to congressional investigators. Right, bombshell. Before any of this was public, they were being offered a special in by WikiLeaks, aka the Russian government. Except again, it turns out it may not have come from the Russian government. There's no evidence Trump looked at it, and the email came 10 days after the initial CNN report said, which means that the email came out after all the information was public. I mean, this is a Brian Ross level screw up. It is a massive, massive screw up. Somebody needs to get suspended for it at the very least, because to misreport in that dramatic a fashion does a disservice to the Trump administration. Then you wonder why Trump runs around shouting fake news. You wonder why Republicans distrust reporting from places like the Washington Post. You wonder why Republicans have now come to the conclusion that nothing can be trusted. Part of it is because they're taking the message too far, but part of it is because there is a grain of truth, which is that a lot of the media are willing to jump on stories that have not been vetted and are not true in order to promulgate a particular narrative. And this is just the best example of that. Democrats are doing this too. Representative Julian Castro, who has presidential aspirations, he comes out and he says that, don't worry, even though there really is no hard information connecting Trump and Russia at this point, disturbing things will definitely come out. I mean, come on.
Well, as you know, I can't discuss most of that stuff now, but, you know, I told you months ago, and when I said it back then, I think it was considered a little bit brash, but I said, I think in April, that I thought that there would be people who would end up in jail. And as I stand here now, I think that there are going to be some things that come out that will be very surprising and disturbing.
Pause it right there, because I just want to read the Chiron, right? This was earlier yesterday, and it says CNN exclusive. Undisclosed emails show follow-up after Don Jr. meeting with Russians at Trump Tower. But the follow-up didn't actually have anything bad to that either. There's no evidence that any follow-up was even responded to by the Trump people. So everything that CNN is reporting, and when you watch CNN, half their coverage is about Russia stuff. Not only is there no smoking gun, there's no bullet, there's no gun. Like I don't even know what these stories are supposed to be proving when they're this bad. And then again, it's amazing to me. People are wondering, how could it possibly be? How could it possibly be that people don't trust the mainstream media? This is why people don't trust the mainstream media. Seriously. Okay. Meanwhile, there's more fallout over the Jerusalem situation. So Donald Trump, I have to give him credit for this tweet. This tweet, he gets credit for it. He says he's going to move the embassy to Jerusalem, acknowledges Jerusalem is the capital of Israel, as I've said, a move of moral bravery and courage. And he released this tweet, which is, I have to say, pretty funny.
Jerusalem is still the capital of Israel and must remain an undivided city accessible to all.
As soon as I take office, I will begin the process of moving the United States ambassador to the city of Israel as chosen as its capital.
I continue to say that Jerusalem will be the capital of Israel, and I have said that before, and I will say it again.
And Jerusalem will remain the capital of Israel, and it must remain undivided.
We will move the American embassy to the eternal capital of the Jewish people, Jerusalem. Therefore, I have determined that it is time to officially recognize Jerusalem as the capital of Israel.
And he tweeted out above this, I fulfilled my campaign promise. Others didn't. Full credit to Trump. This is exactly true. Now, there's a lot of violence that has been breaking out around the world. There are clashes in Judea, Samaria, and the Gaza Strip. Hamas, of course, is calling for an uprising because they're a terrorist group. That's what they do. One Palestinian protester has been shot dead. But to be frank with you, the levels of terrorism that I've seen so far, the levels of violence that I've seen so far have been relatively innocuous. So they say that there are rallies in Malaysia, Indonesia, Iran, Syria, and even America. Ooh. You mean people in Syria are angry? Oh, noes. You mean people in Iran are upset? Well, I guess that changes everything because Iran was our best friend before. You mean Muslims in Malaysia are very upset about things? Well, unless people are actually like getting hurt or killed, I don't really see. So what? They're protests. Big freaking deal. They protest over. If you said tomorrow we're going to have a day of rage, well, we'll call it the Nakba, right? The day that Israel was established, the Palestinians call the Nakba, the disaster. We'll have a day of rage on that day. You'd have the same people protesting. It has nothing to do with Jerusalem. It has to do with the fact they hate Israel. It's that simple. So Thursday, apparently, there were 16 Palestinians wounded. They said that most of the injuries were from tear gas and rubber bullets. And of course, you have all of the usual leftist suspects saying this is going to be the end of the world. It won't be the end of the world. Trump was right to do it. I do want to point out how the media have exacerbated the situation. So Richard Engel, the media like to embed in the Middle East in places like Gaza, and then they just stand around with cameras and watch people burn their own towns. And then they treat it as though something heroic is taking place. This is in Ramallah. Ramallah is completely run by the Palestinian Authority. The Israelis do not run Ramallah. And Richard Engel, over on NBC, here's him reporting.
Good morning. As you can probably see, clashes and civil unrest have broken out here in the West Bank. We are on the outskirts of the Palestinian city of Ramallah. These protesters have begun setting fires. They're burning tires to create a smoke screen, and they are throwing stones and other debris. It's difficult to see, but behind this smoke are Israeli troops, and they have been firing volleys of tear gas occasionally to drive the demonstrators back. All these protesters say they are here for one reason, because Palestinians, they say, will not give up on their right to Jerusalem, no matter what President Trump says.
Okay, well, look at the excitement from Richard Engel. You can see the media are really turned on about all of this. What would happen? Let me just pose something. What would happen if the media minimized the coverage? In the same way that the media minimized the coverage of serial killers, but this seems to me very much like the coverage of the riots in Ferguson or the riots in Baltimore. The media love this stuff and they egg it on, and then they're surprised when violence breaks out. That doesn't wash. It doesn't wash at all. Okay, so in other news, there are a couple of stories that are kind of astonishing today. So one is with regard to yours truly. So apparently I was supposed to speak at Concordia College in Moorhead, I think it's in New Hampshire, and they had funded it. The Student Government Association had voted to fund it. In November 30th, they had voted 13-10 to allocate about $7,000 to Young Americans for Freedom to fund one of my appearances. And now student leaders voted 28-2 against funding it. So they withdrew the funding. More than 150 students and faculty filled Berry Auditorium for an hour-long discussion leading up to the vote that nullified a previous decision to have me. And the SGA sent an executive email, said SGA's first goal is to listen to, represent, and act on the feedback of its students, and there will be a motion put forward to rescind the funding. You are welcome to add to the discussion during the meeting. Some Concordia students, according to the motion to rescind funding, have asserted that Shapiro's harmful messages targeting LGBTQQYALZ communities and other marginalized identities is in direct opposition to the dedication of Concordia and SGA to support diversity, equity, and inclusion of all persons from all backgrounds and identities. So this was an appeasement move. It's pretty astonishing and pretty obvious. Young Americans for Freedom at Concordia, they said bringing Ben Shapiro to campus would be a sign from Concordia College that they value intellectual and political diversity and that they care about the marginalized and underrepresented conservative voices on campus. But they're not going to do it. They've decided that it's not about diversity. Instead, it's mostly about shutting down people who you don't like. It's shutting down folks that you don't like, which of course we already knew from my experiences on college campuses before. Speaking of free speech concerns, this isn't a formal free speech concern because I believe Concordia is a private college. They can do whatever they want. It does demonstrate that their supposed commitment to free speech, however, is a joke. But, you know, in terms of social censure for unpopular opinions that are true, this is an astonishingly bad story. So there's a woman who's a porn star, or was a porn star. Her name was August Ames. And she's 23. She was found dead from an apparent suicide after she was bullied and branded a homophobe for refusing to shoot with a man who has sex with men on camera. She made it clear she was not homophobic. Apparently she's bisexual, or was bisexual, but she said that she wasn't going to do it for safety reasons. So law enforcement sources said that Ames was found early Tuesday morning in Camarillo. She was pronounced dead at the scene. We're told there's no indication of foul play or any other crime occurring. Toxicology tests are being conducted while the death is investigated. Close friends say she had suffered from long-term depression, and they believe a recent incident with online harassment may have contributed to her death. The backlash was fierce when she took to Twitter on Sunday to warn women who had been tapped to replace her at Erotica X that the man she'd be working with has filmed with other men. She said, whichever lady performer is replacing me tomorrow for Erotica X News, you're shooting with a guy who has shot gay porn, just to let you know. BS is all I can say. Do agents really not care about who they're representing? I do my homework for my body. She was ridiculed as homophobic. She wrote, not homophobic. Most girls don't shoot with guys who have shot gay porn for safety. That's just how it is with me. I'm not putting my body at risk. I don't know what they do in their private lives. She says, how am I homophobic if I myself am attracted to women? Not wanting to have sex with gay men is not homophobic. They don't want to have sex with me either, so bye. Okay, that seems to me completely fair, but the point that she's making here is a statistically true one. Okay, the rates of STDs among men who have sex with men are significantly higher than they are among men who have sex with women, right? STDs among men who have sex with men are much, much higher. They just are. And the idea that a homosexual man or a man who's had sex with men is going to have sex with a woman, it increases her risk. It increases her risk pretty dramatically, actually. I'm looking up some of the statistics, if I can find them, from some of the more recent CDC statistics. So let's see if we can find something really quick here. So gay, bisexual, and other men who have had, this is according to CDC, gay, bisexual, other men who have had sex with men are 17 times more likely to get anal cancer than heterosexual men. Gay and bisexual men are significantly more likely to have other forms of STDs. CDC recommends sexually active gay and bisexual men test for HIV at least once a year. Hepatitis C, hepatitis B, gonorrhea, chlamydia, right? The rates are, they're higher because they're higher. I mean, there's nothing else to say about that. And so the idea that this woman was basically run off Twitter and then she committed suicide over this, it demonstrates the insanity of the social censoring that goes on social media like Twitter. People digging up tweets that are 10 years old or finding a tweet that you said yesterday that's completely innocuous and then taking it out of context in order to hurt you. It's just overboard. It's all overboard. And people need to rein it in. There's a digital lynch mob that exists now, and it's pretty scary out there. Okay, so I do want to get to things I like, things I hate, and the mailbag. We'll do a nice mailbag today. But for that, you're going to have to go over to dailywire.com and subscribe. For $9.99 a month, you can get a subscription to dailywire.com. You get the rest of my show live on video. You get the rest of Clavin's show live on video. Knowles' show live on video. Be part of the mailbag today. And next Tuesday, we are having an episode of The Conversation, which means that you get to ask me your questions, but only if you're a subscriber. Everyone gets to watch on Facebook, YouTube, but only if you're a subscriber do you actually get to ask questions yourself and have them answered to make your life better. That's December 12th at 2 p.m. Pacific, 5 p.m. Eastern. We'll stream it live on the Ben Shapiro Facebook page, the Daily Wire YouTube channel. Again, free for everybody to watch, but only subscribers can ask the questions. You get all of that when you subscribe. Plus, if you get the annual subscription, you also get this, the very greatest in all beverage vessels, the leftist tears, hot or cold tumbler. It does indeed hold both hot and cold tears as well as other beverages that may be more sanitary. Check it out over at our website, dailywire.com. Subscribe. $99 a year, so a lot cheaper than the monthly subscription. Or if you just want to listen to the rest of the show later, go over to iTunes, SoundCloud. Make sure that you subscribe and hit download over there. YouTube, please subscribe over there. We have some funny new videos coming out you'll want to be a part of. We are the largest, fastest growing conservative podcast in the nation. Alrighty, so let's do a quick thing I like and a quick thing that I hate, and then we will move to the mailbag. So things I like today, I actually have a couple of things that I like today. So watching all this hubbub over particularly crappy candidates on both sides of the aisle it reminds me of a movie called The Best Man. This is not a well-remembered movie. It's Henry Fonda and Cliff Robertson, Edie Adams, very good cast. The movie was written by Gore Vidal, so it is a left-leaning movie. But the basic plot of it is that Henry Fonda is a former Secretary of State based on Adlai Stevenson, who's supposed to be running for president, and Cliff Robertson is supposed to be based on Richard Nixon. He's running for president too. Cliff Robertson's the bad guy, Henry Fonda's the good guy, and basically they are the two leading candidates for president battling it out. The question is who's going to win and what sort of dirty tricks they'll use at an open convention in order to win. It's entertaining. It's definitely entertaining, and it does say something about you know what lengths people are willing to go to for power.
This is Secretary of State William Russell, candidate for President of the United States. Is he the best man?
You have no sense of responsibility toward anybody or anything. And that is a tragedy in a man, and it is a disaster in a president.
This is Senator Joe Cantwell, candidate for President of the United States. Is he the best man?
You don't understand politics. You don't understand this country.
This is Art Hochstetter, former President of the United States. Will he back the best man?
Power is not a toy that we give to good children. It's a weapon. And the strong man takes it and he uses it.
To get here, some men will stop at nothing.
But the film itself it's very entertaining, and it's all about sort of the manipulations behind the scenes. It's definitely a strained movie in the sense that a bunch of sort of wild coincidences happen at the same time, and there's a lot of scandal going on. It's an exaggeration of reality, but it's a fun movie to watch, and the acting is quite good. Cliff Robertson particularly gives a very good performance in it. Okay, other things that I like. So, believe it or not, DeRay McKesson tweeted something out that I like yesterday. It was not anything of content or significance, but it was very funny. Back in 1996, Patti LaBelle sang for Christmas, and Patti LaBelle was singing some song that I don't know. She didn't know the song either, is the bigger problem. So here's a little bit of the video of Patti LaBelle singing, and she realizes that she actually does not know any of the words that she's about to sing.
Hang all the mistletoe. I'm gonna get you, know you better. This Christmas. Where my background singers? Woo! Oh, baby, baby, and there's the wrong words on the cue cards. I don't know the song. This Christmas, I'm gonna have them all I can. Because I don't have the right words and I have no background singers. Oh, I don't. This is gonna be a very Merry Christmas for you and me. Yeah.
Okay, so it's worthwhile watching the whole thing. It goes on for 2 minutes like this. It's pretty amazing. So thank you, Patti LaBelle, for giving us all a spot of cheer in a dark time. Okay, time for a quick thing that I hate, and then we'll get to the mailbag. Alrighty, so thing that I hate today. There's this tweet that was going around yesterday that's just nuts. It's from a feminist, of course, so I didn't even need to tell you that it was kind of crazy. She calls herself Mrs. Claus, and here's what she tweeted. Listen, guys, let me clarify something for you. When women's spaces say men are welcome, that's not true. We're just scared to tell you no. So, just to be clear, no means no, but yes also means no. So everything means no, unless yes means yes, but it probably means no because you're scared. If you're wondering why men may be slightly confused about what the standards of behavior ought to be, it's folks like Mrs. Claus who are not making things any easier here. Okay, time for the mailbag. So let's start with Robert. Robert says, Ben, what is your view on mandatory drug testing for welfare recipients? The answer is yes. Good stuff. The reason that you should have mandatory drug testing for welfare recipients is because there should be some strings attached. If the idea on welfare is to get you back to work, we don't want you drugging out in your free time and then going and getting my taxpayer dollars to sponsor your drug habit. Matthew says, hey, Ben, knowing that Trump has declared Jerusalem to be Israel's capital and promised to move the embassy, do you regret not voting for him last year? Will you consider voting for him for re-election? I personally feel I would switch my vote to him. So as far as regretting my vote, I could only base my vote on the evidence that was in evidence at the time. So I've said where I think that I was wrong about Trump, right? I thought that I was wrong about him on Gorsuch. I think he's governed much more conservative than the evidence suggested that he was going to that point. I didn't think he was going to do what he just did on Jerusalem. He did it, and I've given him, I think, more than full points on that. As far as would I consider voting for him next time? Sure, I'd consider voting for him next time. You know, I'll look at the options that come up, and we'll see where we are in 3 years. But yeah, of course I'd consider voting for him next time. I considered voting for him last time. So, you know, I think that you can only make your decision based on the evidence that was at hand at the time, but he has exceeded my expectations in a variety of ways. In some areas, he has not, and I've been clear on that as well. Joseph says, Hi, Ben. I believe from a theological and historical perspective, Jerusalem is the eternal capital of Israel. But how do I argue against those who contend that after 70 AD, the Jews were evicted through military means and thus lost their claim to the land? Couldn't the Mexicans or Native Americans make the same historical and ancestral claims about the southwestern United States? Well, the answer is no, the reason being because even after the expulsion of Jews in 70 AD, Jews had a continuous presence in the land, and there was never an independent state of Palestine that existed outside of Jewish rule. It was always part of a broader empire. It was never an actual state or land that was run by an independent conglomerate of people. That just never happened. So the longest lasting group of people, it's more like a native reservation than it would be like anything else, in the sense that Jews were always there and maintained a presence there. And again, if you look at the original Native American treaties in the United States before the Trail of Tears and the attempt to force Indians off their land, Native Americans off their land, I think there's a good case that those people should have been allowed to stay on their land. Heather says, hi, Ben. I'm a big fan. I greatly respect your values politically and personally. My question is religiously based. I'm a critical care registered nurse. I've had some emotionally taxing events at work recently. I've never considered myself a religious person. Lately, I've felt a desire for spiritual guidance. I do not belong to a church, nor does my family. Do you have any advice on how I should begin? Well, I think that you have to decide whether what you're looking for is a community experience or you're just looking for comforting religious thought or deep religious thought. I think that good beginning religious thought is C.S. Lewis. I like a lot of C.S. Lewis's work. You should go check out his religious thought. I've recommended many of his books, including The Abolition of Man and Mere Christianity on my show, even though I'm a Jew. I think there's a lot in Mere Christianity, particularly in the first third before he gets to the super Christian part that I agree with. So that is worth checking out. As far as the community that you're looking for, I would check out some churches, see where you feel welcome, see where you feel like you find people who are thinking along the same lines. If you have questions, does the pastor or preacher or priest, somebody who is answering those questions in a fair and honest fashion. Morgan says, Ben, how did you know you wanted to marry your wife, and how long did it take for you to propose? I knew I wanted to marry her for a couple of reasons. So I think that here's the typical pathway for men deciding they want to get married. First, there has to be physical attraction. Okay, this is just the reality. When men are first attracted to a woman, it's because there's a physical attraction to the woman. So my wife happens to be smoking hot, so this definitely was the initial draw. But in the first date, I mean, I dated a lot of women one time and decided I didn't want to date anymore because they were not either intellectually stimulating or have the same values. She not only, there was more than just a spark there is what I'm saying. It's easy to find, I think, a certain level of chemistry, particularly sexual chemistry with people. I don't think that's the hardest thing in the world to find. What is hard to find is somebody who shares your values. And my wife and I, on our first date, for 3 hours, discussed free will and determinism and how many kids we each wanted to have. I mean, we were dating for marriage. And so you have to, I'm not saying sit there with a checklist, but you do have to have a group of things in your head that you want out of a spouse. And I don't mean like they're going to, shine your shoes or make dinner for you. I mean things like what kind of life do they want to build and what kind of values do they hold dear? Because that's the stuff you're going to be able to build a future on. Jonathan Haidt has a chapter in the Happiness Hypothesis about love. And one of the things he points out is that when you first meet your potential mate, then the level of passionate love is, I think he calls it passionate love and companionate love. Passionate love is like here on the scale, and companionate love, meaning how well you know the person and how much you love them for who they are as a companion, is down here. And this falls off within about 6 months. Passionate love falls off within 6 months or a year, a couple of years at the most. It doesn't mean that it doesn't exist anymore, but it just is different. Okay, I can tell you, as somebody who's been married for 10 years, the feeling that you have for your spouse, particularly the kind of fiery need that you have for your spouse at the very beginning is not the same burning need that you have for your spouse throughout your life. And the companionate love tends to rise. So passionate love declines, companionate love rises. That's the way it should happen, because companionate love is more important when you're building a life and building a family. Who you want to have sex with is a pretty arbitrary decision to a certain extent. Okay, so Tanner says, hi, Ben, I have a quick question. My older brother got a girl pregnant. He has only been dating for maybe a month and a half, does not know what to do. He wants to settle down and get married with the girl, take responsibility for the kid. She's unwilling to get married and take responsibility for the kid. She wants to put the kid up for adoption, which my brother does not want to do. I want to give him some helpful advice. What should he do? Well, here's my feeling. If she's not going to take care of the kid, and he is not going to get married and adopt the kid and have his spouse adopt the kid, or if your parents are not available to adopt the children, children need a mother and a father. A single father is not a good solution. A single mother is not a good solution. If those are the only two solutions on the table, put the kid up for adoption, put them in a loving two-parent family. It'd be a benefit to the child. The best outcome is biological mother and father bringing up child on average, not for every family, but on average. But it is more important that the child grow up in a two-parent family, a solid two-parent family, than that your brother be with his own child. It would be an act of tremendous self-sacrifice by your brother, actually, I think, to put the child in the best living scenario, unless your parents are willing to adopt the kid. Joseph says, do you think Trump's become more conservative since his first day in office? Why or why not? It's hard for me to say whether Trump himself has become more conservative. I will say that his policy has become more conservative. His policy in the last week and a half, the last 2 weeks, has been as conservative as anything I've ever seen. More conservative than I would say the Reagan administration in the last couple of weeks. But as far as him personally, I never get into the business of reading what's going on in Donald Trump's head because I think that that's a risky business. Jenna says, hi, Ben. After years of wanting to learn the violin, I finally coughed up the money and bought my first violin. I've been taking lessons for a few months now, but I'm curious as to what advice would be when learning to play. What is the most important thing to remember when playing? Well, I mean, it differs based on your skill level. So when you become as good as I am, when you've been playing for 15 years, and you better be good at that point or quit. When you've played, I've been playing since I was 5 years old. So what you're thinking about then is making sure that there's musicality to what you're playing, that you're actually thinking about what you want things to sound like. When you're at beginning stages, it is really practice, practice, practice. Make sure that all the muscle memory is in place. Metronome is your friend. People tend to lose tempo. Intonation is your friend. If you have somebody who can play the piano with you, that would definitely help because otherwise you end up with a sort of bizarre relative pitch. Tyler says, what individual in American history has caused the most damage to the country? This is a good question. There are many individuals who've caused tremendous damage to the country. I would say there's a very solid case for, well, I mean, obviously slaveholders. I would put Woodrow Wilson up there. I would put FDR up there. I would put LBJ up there. There are a number of demagogues who I think have driven public opinion in the wrong direction. It's hard to name one person, but I would say that the legacy of slavery continues to cruelly divide our politics, even though we all agree that slavery is bad now. Danny says, I'm a cradle Catholic. I take my faith extremely seriously. However, in the past few years, I felt extremely drawn to Judaism, which is where my own Christian faith has roots. This attraction has grown ever stronger, even through my own research and also because of your inspiration. I wondered what your opinion was on Christians celebrating Hanukkah and Pesach. So the halachic opinion is that Christians, the kind of the Jewish law opinion is that Christians shouldn't celebrate these things. I will, add a bit of heresy here. I think that it's fine for Christians to celebrate these things. I think anything that connects you to the God of the Judeo-Christian religion is a good thing. And Jesus celebrated Passover, so I don't really see the problem with this per se. In fact, my family has invited non-Jews over to Passover for years, and for Hanukkah parties. So if you want to go for it, go for it. Whatever makes you feel closer to God. Christoph says, Ben, I believe your understanding of abortion to be somewhat flawed, or at least there's one part of your position you've not been clear about. This pertains to when you define life to begin. To introduce what I mean, let me pose a very practical question and one very applicable to good-hearted couples that want to have children but are having difficulty doing so. Do you support in vitro fertilization? This procedure always results in the destruction of several embryos. Are couples that pursue this method of fertility killing humans in the process? So they are ending a potential incipient human life. IVF, I have always said that if you have the money to use every fertilized egg, that's how IVF should be performed. And in fact, I've said this, and there's a member of my synagogue who his wife had gotten in vitro and she had frozen the leftover egg and they were going to throw it away. And his wife said, I don't think that that's moral. They implanted the egg and they had a baby, and this baby is now their child. I think that every fertilized egg ought to be treated with the respect due to, at the very least, potential human life. And so if you're going to treat in vitro in the most moral possible way, you don't create fertilized eggs just for destruction. Instead, you implant the number of fertilized eggs that you're willing to bear to fruition. Michael says, Ben, what is your thought on the amount of money we spend on the military? It's less about amount than what we spend the military money on. In some cases, we're spending it on frivolous nonsense, weapon systems we don't need and all that. But I don't really have a problem with us spending an enormous amount of money on the military. I think it's one of the only decent functions of the government. Let's see. Nicholas says, howdy, Ben. What are your thoughts on the Rockefeller, Carnegie, and Vanderbilt monopolies? Also, wow, we're going back to like 1880 here. This is great. What do you think the government, do you think the government was right to break up the Standard Oil Trust, and should the government have broken up other monopolies? So I think that the government was not right to break up the trust. I think a lot of trust busting was based on a fallacious assumption about how monopolies actually operated. A lot of those monopolies were not actual monopolies. And I think that a lot of the trust busting was basic class warfare that was taking place at the time. To speak to specific trusts, I would actually have to do a little more research on that. So I will do that. Let's see. Okay, final one. Philip says, as a small limited government proponent, what suggestions would you have to rationalize my desire to fund NASA to historic highs and literally shoot for the stars on outer space science exploration? I get that low Earth orbit launches and deliveries to the ISS are best suited to private entities, but there seems to be very little motivation or reward for a private entity like SpaceX to explore for the sake of exploration. Well, I think you'd have to talk to Elon Musk about that, because I believe that Elon Musk has actually talked about doing deep space exploration. If it's privately fundable, I think that'd be great. The only purpose for actual government funding of deep space exploration would be for defense purposes, or for the possibility of creating, new cures to disease or something, creating new inventions. But as a general rule, I think that NASA funding non-connected to defense is a mistake and should be best left in private hands. I do think private funding will fill in the gaps there, as SpaceX is showing. Okay, so we'll be back here on Monday. Have a wonderful weekend. I'm Ben Shapiro. This is The Ben Shapiro Show. The Ben Shapiro Show is produced by Mathis Glover, executive producer Jeremy Boring, senior producer Jonathan Hay. Our technical producer is Austin Stevens, edited by Alex Zingaro. Audio is mixed by Mike Cormina. Hair and makeup is by Jesua Olvera. The Ben Shapiro Show is a Daily Wire Forward Publishing production. Copyright Forward Publishing 2017.
He's here. Now, broadcasting from the underground command post, deep in the bowels of a hidden bunker, somewhere under the brick and steel of a nondescript building, we've once again made contact with our leader, Mark Levin.
Hello, everybody. Mark Levin here. Our number, 877-381-3811, 877-381-3811. 76 years ago today, America was facing a very serious matter, because 76 years ago, the day before, the Japanese attacked us at Pearl Harbor. And while there's a debate about sexual harassment and sexual harassment allegations and the rest going on in Congress, that's not what they were discussing then. They were discussing a declaration of war against Japan. And I thought I'd play a couple of minutes of this declaration of war, or President Franklin Roosevelt's request for a declaration of war, to remind us of the seriousness that we face even today with North Korea, with Iran, yes, with Russia, China, and so forth. Cut 13, go.
Yesterday, December 7th, 1941, a date which will live in infamy. The United States of America was suddenly and deliberately attacked by naval and air forces of the Empire of Japan. The United States was at peace with that nation, and at the solicitation of Japan, was still in conversation with its government and its emperor, looking toward the maintenance of peace in the Pacific. The attack yesterday on the Hawaiian Islands has caused severe damage to American naval and military forces. I regret to tell you that very many American lives have been lost. In addition, American ships have been reported torpedoed on the high seas between San Francisco and Honolulu. As Commander-in-Chief of the Army and Navy, I have directed that all measures be taken for our defense, but always will our whole nation remember the character of the onslaught against us. No matter how long it may take us to overcome this premeditated invasion, the American people in their righteous might will win through to absolute victory. I believe that I interpret the will of the Congress and of the people when I assert that we will not only defend ourselves to the uttermost, but will make it very certain that this form of treachery shall never again endanger us. Hostilities exist. There is no blinking at the fact that our people, our territory, and our interests are in grave danger. With confidence in our armed forces, with the unbounding determination of our people, we will gain the inevitable triumph, so help us God. I ask that the Congress declare that since the unprovoked and dastardly attack by Japan on Sunday, December 7th, 1941, a state of war has existed between the United States and the Japanese Empire.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, I just felt this was necessary, very, very important, that we bring some context to the seriousness of what takes place to our country, what might take place in this country as well, with the forces that are arrayed against us, this time with nuclear weapons. Now, we've talked a lot about the NFL. We've talked a lot about the players taking knees. I certainly have, and we've been repulsed by it. We've been repulsed by men who live in the lap of luxury, who are treated like idols, who are fantastically wealthy, who claim to be social warriors, social justice warriors. They do not respect, in my view, the armed forces of the United States. They do not respect law enforcement in the United States. They do not respect the United States, despite what they say and what their propagandists and surrogates in the sports world say on their behalf. We are blessed beyond imagination to have been born in this country. I don't care what your race is. I don't care what your sexual preference is. I don't care what your religion is. There's not another country on the face of the earth like it. And we have men and women to thank who've put their lives on the line to defend this great country. And as I say, the NFL has done enormous damage to itself. It did damage to itself the other day when it rehired Roger Goodell and gave him a $200 million contract over 5 years. The Players Association has been nothing but a disgrace. And yet there are owners who love this country. And there are owners who are troubled by what's going on. Excuse me. Hold on there. Excuse me. Okay. And Bruce Allen is the president of the Washington Redskins. I like him very much. And the Redskins, owned by Dan Snyder, the president, Bruce Allen, the Redskins, at the World War II Memorial in Washington yesterday, Bruce Allen spoke at the Pearl Harbor Remembrance Day. And hasn't gotten the kind of attention it deserves, in my view. It's just a few minutes long. So having spent a long time in dealing with the ugly underbelly of the league, we should also acknowledge those who are patriots. Here's Bruce Allen, and here's the remembrance. Cut 12, go.
We ask our scouts around the country different characteristics of prospects we're going to look at. And there's words in there that are amazing that I want to bring up to you today on the coincidence of being around these heroes. We ask if these prospects are unselfish, if they have a commitment. Are they dependable? Are they going to be a good teammate? Are they coachable? Are they tough? Are they a winner? Clearly, the scouting report on the 16 million Americans that served this country in World War II can all check those boxes.
On a beautiful Thursday in our nation's capital, Washington Redskins president Bruce Allen and the team's marching band took part in the Pearl Harbor Remembrance Day at the World War II Memorial. Allen was the keynote speaker as almost a dozen World War II veterans were in attendance for a moving ceremony and wreath laying. Allen shared his unending gratitude for those who made the ultimate sacrifice.
It's a great honor for the Redskins to be here and our band to be here to play the tribute to all the branches of service and to thank the men and women who provided us all of our freedoms.
Oh, for us being old veterans, it's quite an honor. It really is. We were just recovered 52 MIAs out of the island of Tarawa, and they're being buried as we speak in Arlington Cemetery daily and weekly. And some of them they can't identify, so they're in JPAC in Hawaii. So it's an honor to be here.
They knew they had to win for America and our allies. Our fans and our band loves playing Hail to the Redskins when we score a touchdown. And yes, our fans and team are depressed when we lose a game like we did last week. But our men and women knew they had to go win a war, and they did it.
The obstacles they had to overcome versus today is inspiring to us, and their belief in the country and the belief in the people. They have such a cheery attitude for the challenges they faced.
For Team USA, Pearl Harbor marked the beginning of the war. For our enemies, it was the beginning of the end. It was a day that defined America and changed the world. On behalf of all the prior Washington Redskins teams, all the current Washington Redskins, and all the future Washington Redskin teams, we can't begin to thank you enough for your service, your courageous service to our country, and winning that war. Because of you, we're able to pursue our dreams of playing the game of football. Because of you, we're allowed to pursue the American dream. And probably more important, because of you, you've inspired future generations of military service who continue to protect the American way.
Mark Levin.
Declaration of war. And then, of course, the same occurred with respect to Germany and Italy. And virtually every family in this country was affected. And, you know, when I watched these men, and when I watched Bruce Allen yesterday on a clip, and when I watched some of these men with the President of the United States yesterday, these are very old men. Some of them are in wheelchairs. Some of them have walking canes. Hunched over and so forth. And what heroes. Those men have more courage than those 6'5", 320-pound football players could ever have. Ever. Ever. And we mistreat our military today. We underfund the military. We're short on pilots. We're short on troops. We're short on ships. And yet whenever we call on our military to stand up, our military stands up. 76 years ago today, FDR goes to Congress for a declaration of war against Japan, which attacked us 76 years ago yesterday. In honor of the United States military. Don't worry, we'll get to all the sexual harassment crap. But in honor of our wonderful, magnificent United States military, the Marines. you know, President of the United States is battling with Schumer and Pelosi over properly funding the United States military. Because the Democrat Party is the party of illegal aliens and foreigners. Because they know this is how they increase their ranks. This is how they increase the ranks of the people who basically, increasingly, need government, want government, and expect government. And that's what the Democrat Party is all about. It's not about liberty. It's not about private property. It's not about capitalism. It's not about creating wealth and opportunity. It's not about protecting the nation state. It is about power any way they can get power. The evisceration of the Constitution, the importation of people who they believe will register as Democrats. You know damn well if open borders resulted in people coming into this country who were voting Republican or their progeny were voting Republican, the Democrats would be demanding a Berlin Wall. You know that's the truth. But the bottom line is here, our military is not getting the respect it needs from the Democrat Party, from the media, and mostly from the rest of it. It needs funding. It needs a lot of funding. China's on the rise. Russia's on the rise. North Korea's building nukes. Iran's building nukes. Who the hell do we expect to defend us? Who the hell do we expect to defend us? The Peace Corps? I'll be right back.
Mark Levin, radio's principal patriot. Call in now at 877-381-3811.
All right. Now let's get back to modern America, shall we? Modern America. Trent Franks. Trent Franks has been in the House of Representatives for some time. He is a solid conservative. He's not my buddy. I don't socialize with him, but I've met him once or twice or three times, and I've been a fan of all the kinds of things he's been trying to do to help this country. And he just resigned immediately today. And I'm trying to figure out this story. I read Roll Call. I read The Hill. I've read Politico. I've read other accounts of what's taken place here, or supposedly taken place, and I can't figure it out. Now, it is obvious that he and his wife are not able to have children. And yet they have two children through surrogates. He's an evangelical Christian. He's a very religious man. He opposes abortion, and he's made that abundantly clear over the span of his career. There are apparently allegations, or were by two female staffers, where he brought up the possibility of surrogates, perhaps involving them. And now Politico, these are all anonymous sources, every single one. The staffers are anonymous. The friends of the staffers are anonymous. The sources are anonymous. So apparently, or reportedly, he may have asked two female staffers if they were interested in being surrogates because he and his wife wanted to have another child. And that was pretty much it yesterday, and in addition to the fact that Paul Ryan forced him to resign. Then we get more information as time goes on. Now we have a female aide, maybe one of the two, who says in Politico, without identification, that he tried to convince her that she was in love with him. And then she felt retaliated against after turning Franks down. Franks absolutely denies that and denies all the allegations. I have absolutely never physically intimidated, coerced, or had or attempted to have any sexual contact with any member of my congressional staff. Then we have a remarkable allegation that he offered $5 million for somebody to be a surrogate. Well, why would you need to offer $5 million for somebody to be a surrogate? You can do it a lot cheaper than that. I mean, I'm not an expert on this, but people do these things when they're desperate to have children. You don't have to offer $5 million to anybody. So I'm scratching my head. What's going on here? And that was in roll call. A former aide to Republican Representative Trent Fanks told AP, and I assume it's the same too, but I don't know. He repeatedly pressed her to carry his child, at one point offering her $5 million to act as a surrogate. You know, and this raises the question of some of these problems here. This case is thrown in with Al Franken, where you have photographic evidence, and women who have used their names and said he grabbed their butts and so forth and so on. This case is thrown in with John Conyers. I've been watching it all day, where we have women who've come forward, gone on TV, gone on Fox, and explained in explicit detail what John Conyers did. I'm trying to figure this case out because we have none of that. No physical touching, no, walking around in underwear, excuse me, no photographs, no ethics complaints filed, no settlement with public dollars. I mean, based on the record right now. And yet the leaks, even though he's resigning, little piece of this, little piece of that information coming forward. And we don't know who they are. And he said he's resigning today because his wife is in the hospital and his family said enough is enough. And so I'm perplexed by this. I'm perplexed by this because this goes against everything I've known about him. Again, I'm not a personal friend of his. I've not socialized with him, but I know who he is. And I know how he's led his life, or at least believe I know how he's led his life. And maybe it's inappropriate to ask a staffer if they're interested in being a surrogate, or ask two staffers if they're interested in being a surrogate. I find it very hard to believe he offered somebody $5 million. I don't know what his background is, but I seriously doubt he has $5 million, and it's unnecessary to offer somebody $5 million. There are people who are prepared to be surrogates, and they don't require $5 million. So that just sounds weird to me. Does it to you, Mr. Producer? And the Politico piece doesn't even say that he made sexual overtures. It says that a staffer or the staffers weren't sure how to take his comments about being surrogates. If he meant to have sex with him or if he meant in vitro fertilization. Well, I don't even understand that. If you're going to accuse somebody of something, you're not sure of what they meant? Whether in vitro fertilization or to sleep with you? That suggests to me that he didn't ask them to sleep with him, because then you wouldn't say, I'm not sure what he meant. Well, he said what he meant. And then I have a real problem with Politico, because Politico is a left-wing news outlet. We talk about them sometimes, we cite them sometimes, but it is the favorite or one of the favorite recipients of leaks from Republican leadership. And Paul Ryan couldn't stand this guy. He's a member of the Freedom Caucus. Now, this is all I know so far from published reports. I know nothing firsthand. But that's all I know about John Conyers. I wasn't a witness to what he was doing for 412 years either, or a witness to, Al Franken at the Minnesota Fair and so forth. But if these women would come forward, it would be a lot easier to ask them questions. I don't mean to grill them and abuse them. I'm not interested in that or anybody else being treated that way. Well, what exactly was said to you? What do you mean, $5 million? And yet there's no suggestion that I see in any of these reports, and many of these are liberal outlets, none of them, of the Matt Lauer kind of conduct, of the Charlie Rose kind of conduct, of the John Conyers kind of conduct, of the Al Franken kind of conduct. None of it. None of it. None of it. And yet tonight he's thrown in with Conyers and Franken. Maybe more information will come out. I don't know. Mark, you're taking sides. I'm trying to figure these things out. That's why when the information is kind of overwhelming and people are on the record and you have photographic evidence, that's one case. When you have people coming forward, in the case of John Conyers, very specific about details, and he's really not denying them, that's another case. And down the line. And down the line. And we're talking here about in vitro fertilization and surrogates. No, I personally, if that was my situation, no, I wouldn't mention it to a staffer or suggest it and so forth and so on. But I'm truly confounded by this. So a staffer or two staffers thought that by that they weren't clear, according to Politico, if he meant sex or in vitro fertilization. You're not clear? Well, did he say he wanted to have sex or not? Apparently not. And they had used this process before, as I understand it, to have their children. To have their children. So this, to me, is a different situation. Unless there's more information, I'm just basing it on what I know today. Hey, look, the media throw this stuff in our lap, and we do the best to figure it out. That's what happens. That's what happens. They throw it in our lap. I didn't report this. They throw it in our lap, and you do the best you can to figure it out. And yet I'm about facts and reason and principles and so forth, and you look at this, this is a different case, at least so far. It's a very different case. He's not walking around in his underwear. He's not squeezing people's butts. He's not, grabbing a woman's breasts while they're sleeping and there's a photograph of it. None of that's taking place. Zero. He talked about surrogates. And from there appears to be somewhat of a dispute. Even the reporting, as I say, the reporting doesn't provide clarity. The reporting is not providing clarity. But they weren't sure if he meant sleep with them or in vitro fertilization. And yet, again, if you're a reporter, wouldn't you say, well, what do you mean you're not sure? Did he ask you to sleep with? Did he ask you to sleep with him? Yes or no? Well, maybe he implied it and suggested. I don't know. Okay, well, what do you know? And Politico doesn't tell us. Politico doesn't tell us. And maybe there'll be more details coming out. Let's see. I'm just reading this. And it comes out quickly, and it's hard to keep up with all this stuff. There are more details, too. I can't stay on top of all of it. And, of course, the lead story tonight is Roy Moore, because the president is campaigning in Pensacola, which is right across the border from Mobile, Alabama. I know exactly where these areas are. Beautiful areas, by the way. And the Democrats, as we said here, very, very predictable, are trying to pin all this sexual harassment stuff on Donald Trump. Some of them are asking now if there should be an investigation of Trump, if Trump should resign. Their usual friendly media outlets, The Nation and so forth, left-wing kook operations, doing exactly the same thing. So it all comes back to Trump. The Democrats are good at this. They have selective moral outrage. That's what I used to call it. That's what it is. Selective moral outrage. Never outraged by Clinton when he was in power. Never outraged by Ted Kennedy, period. Never outraged by Jack Kennedy or Lyndon Johnson. No outrage there. John Conyers. You had Joe Scarborough defending John Conyers as the icon of the House of Representatives. You had Nancy Pelosi doing the same thing. She reversed course in a few days. You had people like Dick Durbin saying that Al Franken has acted responsibly and deserves due process. And then they got their act together and they remembered, whoa, this is about power and politics. What are we talking about? We're the ones who are supposed to stand for women and abortion and the pill and the government funding of all of it. We can't afford to lose our women constituency. And so now they have schemed and plotted, and here we are. I'll be right back.
Mark Levin.
That time of year again when the days are shorter. Don't waste your precious daylight sifting through a sea of search results when looking for the right business software. Get home on time tonight with Capterra.com. Whether you're a startup looking to keep better track of customers, a nonprofit hoping to have a record fundraising year, or a business that simply needs better payroll software, you need software, and Capterra's got you covered. Search Capterra's 400 categories of software. Discover the right tool for your business, anything from email marketing to scheduling to accounting and beyond. Capterra makes it easy to find what you're looking for. Capterra has thousands of ratings and reviews from actual software users just like you. Best of all, using Capterra is absolutely free. 2018 will be here before you know it. So make sure you've got the software your business needs today to help you do what you do best. Join the millions who use Capterra. All right, let's do it. Capterra, C-A-P-T-E-R-R-A. That's CAPTERRA.com/Levin. Capterra.com/LEVIN. Check it out, folks. It's well worth it. It really is. All right. So, there's other information floating around. Somebody said that there may be over 40 examples of sexual harassment on Capitol Hill. I have no idea, but I do know this. Gloria Allred has a lot to answer for. Gloria Allred, the left-wing kook lawyer, in my humble opinion, who I've dealt with before, she has a lot to answer for. Turns out that that yearbook, that the accuser to Roy Moore, when she was 14, she says, inappropriate conduct took place. Again, I'm just analyzing the facts. It was funny, I don't mean it funny, but odd, that they would not turn over that yearbook, for handwrite experts, an independent handwrite expert. Gloria Allred said over and over again, not until there is a Senate committee hearing on Roy Moore. You don't have a Senate committee hearing on a candidate. So she must have known something was wrong. She was reluctant to turn over that yearbook, and so was the individual who was making the allegations against Moore. And now we know why. She's confessed that part of what was written in that yearbook was written by her. The date, the restaurant location, and the title, the DA initials. But the rest of it is accurate. But why did she do that? Why did she do that? And it really does raise questions about credibility. You can draw whatever conclusion you wish. And she stood by what was written in that yearbook, as did Gloria Allred, for weeks. Most of the major media in this country rejected any idea that there should be a handwriting expert to take a look at this. They just thought that the Roy Moore campaign and Roy Moore himself were raising objections, were just throwing smoke out there. Mitch McConnell, Cory Gardner, none of them. None of them said, let's really dig down on the evidence and see what's going on. No, just assumed it's accurate. This is why it's important to have actual names and information and so forth so you can take a look at it. Like Leanne Tweeden had a photograph of Al Franken grabbing her breast when she's sleeping. That's pretty conclusive. I'll be right back.
He's here. Now, broadcasting from the underground command post, deep in the bowels of a hidden bunker, somewhere under the brick and steel of a nondescript building, we've once again made contact with our leader, Mark Levin.
Hello, everybody. Mark Levin here. Our number, 877-381-3811, 877-381-3811. Well, it's going to snow here, I guess. I really can't stand it. But anyway, who cares? Beverly Young Nelson, that's the Roy Moore accuser, or at the time the 14-year-old. She was on Good Morning America today. She was on Good Morning America today, and this is where the information came out about her writing some of the information that was in the yearbook. Hat tip, Real Care Politics. Cut 6, go.
Young's proof that she knew Moore, her yearbook with this inscription. But Moore and his supporters have called into question that inscription, noting the writing under the signature appears to be different.
Let's look at Beverly Nelson. Everybody knows her yearbook is a forgery.
Nelson says she did make notes to the inscription, but the message was all Roy Moore.
Beverly, he signed your yearbook.
He did sign it.
And you made some notes underneath.
Yes.
Excuse me. For weeks, Gloria Allred and Nelson have insisted that that was all Nelson. For weeks. I would like to know what Gloria Allred actually knew. But why did Ms. Nelson continue with that position, that posture, for weeks? Only up until now. A couple days before the election. Why didn't she say the top part is Moore and the bottom part is me? But she didn't, until now. And it was obvious when they refused to take this yearbook and give it to an independent writing analyst, a professional, an expert, to make a determination. They refused to do it, and my understanding is they still refuse to do it, based on published reports. Does that raise any questions about Beverly Young Nelson's credibility? I'm not attacking her. I'm asking you a question. Does it raise any questions about it? When the inscription about the restaurant location and so forth is hers and not his, and only now we learn about it? Only now. And isn't it interesting, the gaggle of media out there, they could care less. They didn't pursue this with any degree of resolve. They didn't pursue this with any degree of resolve. And yet anything Beverly Young Nelson says is to be believed, period. And this is the problem in the Trent Franks case. We don't have anybody to talk to. We don't know what their evidence is. We don't know what their information is. We have such people in the Conyers case. We have such people in the Al Franken case. We have such people in this case. We have no people by name in the Trent Franks case. Maybe they'll come forward. Maybe we'll be able to figure this out, because the Politico report doesn't do us much good in terms of understanding exactly what the offense is, in terms of whether they raised the question on that one or more of the staffers, one or two of them, whether they weren't sure if he was asking, that is Franks, whether to have sex with them, or whether they would help him with as a surrogate with in vitro fertilization. Well, that seems to me to be the very, very crucial question. And yet Politico doesn't answer it, and they have access to these anonymous sources. You and I don't. And then again, it's dropped in our laps. Now, I want to talk about this show, The Morning Joe, which is named after Joe Scarborough. This is a very, very nasty, vile program. It really is. It's sort of a Mort Downey show. They're both Mort Downey, except Mort Downey had some limits and later regretted how he handled television programming. But Joe Scarborough and Mika Brzezinski, soon to be wedded, these people have no boundaries. No boundaries whatsoever. And it's amazing. They had on their panel Mark Halpern, who's now had to be resigned or fired from everything he's done because of multiple women who've come forward. Multiple women. And he doesn't deny most of the allegations they made. Harold Ford, I don't know what the truth is there, but Harold Ford has been a guest from time to time. There are now reports about him. Whether they're accurate or not, I don't know. Of course, they were friendly with Matt Lauer on the Today Show. Very friendly with Matt Lauer. Then they have a guy by the name of Mike Barnacle there. Mike Barnacle is was a plagiarist. And this consists in part of their panel. And then you had Joe Scarborough himself giving one of the most aggressive, emotional defenses of John Conyers imaginable. And has yet to apologize to the American people or to his audience. Or to the women who John Conyers molested. Nothing. And now Mika Brzezinski, who fancies herself as a leader among women and who is a prominent speaker at various women's functions and meetings and so forth, I want you to listen to what she has to say about Leanne Tweeden. Leanne Tweeden, who actually is a photograph of Al Franken, who she says was grabbing her breasts when she was sleeping on an airplane, among other things. Where other women have come forward by name, about how he grabbed their backsides. And that seems to have been a pattern. There wasn't a question of whether he grabbed their backsides, whether he wanted sex or in vitro fertilization. No. He grabbed their backsides. They say it emphatically, definitively. But Mika Brzezinski's upset because Al Franken's a friend and Al Franken's a leftist. I want you to listen to her because she's revealed herself yet again as a complete fraud and phony. Cut 4, go.
We've never really talked about the woman who first came out against Al Franken, who's in the picture that you say, Susan, is just the death knell. I would think a dress owned by Monica Lewinsky would bring down a president, but it didn't. So I'm surprised that you think a comedian's picture of a performer, Playboy model who goes on Hannity, who voted for Trump.
All right, stop right there. So a former Playboy model, I didn't know that about her, it doesn't matter, who goes on Hannity, who voted for Trump. I hope you women are listening out there. What Mika Brzezinski is saying is she will defend liberal men who she agrees with, and she will defend liberal women who claim to be victims. But she will not stand up for a woman like Leanne Tweeden, who really has an overwhelming case against Al Franken, including a photograph. Pretty incredible, isn't it? MSNBC won't say anything. MSNBC won't say anything. She is a complete disgrace. Absolute disgrace. Go ahead.
I see some politics there, but I haven't brought that up every step of the way because, of course, in this Me Too environment, you must always just believe the women.
No. Nobody's saying that. I never believed Anita Hill, even before the Me Too environment. Never believed her for a second. How about you, Mika? I'm raising questions about the Trent Franks case, not because I just want to raise questions about the Trent Franks case, but I don't even know who's making the allegations. I have no idea. Maybe we'll find out at some point. Maybe we'll get some more information. And the information in Politico is even confounding. That you won't find Mika Brzezinski raising questions about it. I don't mean denouncing the women who are speaking anonymously, but wanting to know more information. Go ahead.
But there's a lot of reasons why we need to look at the women seriously and believe them. And in many cases, like, for example, I spoke to accusers in Mark Halperin, to which he admits a lot of what he's accused of doing. I spoke to them. I believe them. Right.
You spoke to them, you believed them, and he confessed. So that's not really hard to do. The hard cases is where you have people making anonymous allegations in the media, and the person being targeted denying them or explaining them. Go ahead.
I was wondering if all women need to be believed. And
no, all women don't need to be believed. Each case is different. Each case is different. The case against Conyers was open and shut. The case against Al Franken is open and shut. Open and shut. Now we have an issue that came up with the yearbook with Ms. Nelson and her allegation against Roy Moore, and I can assure you Mika Brzezinski will not be questioning it. She'll be defending it and dismissing it. Go ahead.
That we are being the judge, the jury, and the cops here, and so did Senate Democrats getting ahead of their skis. And trust me, Kirsten Gillibrand, I want you to run for president, but you got to keep it real.
I don't want her to run for president. She's a chameleon. She's a fake and a fraud. She not only supported Bill Clinton, he supported hers. We talked about at length on November 17th. I talked about at length yesterday, and so forth. And yet, Brzezinski wants her to be president of the United States. What kind of show is this show, The Morning Joe? What kind of show is this? With truly stupid people as the hosts, very questionable panel members, on a left-wing kook network. I'll be right back.
Mark Levin.
The great WABC Robert in Queens. Go right ahead, sir.
Hello, Mark. Mark, back to the topic. Sexual harassment.
Back to what?
Back to you were talking about the cases of sexual harassment we've been discussing.
Right. Mm-hmm.
A quick question. You said that it's open and shut with Al Franken, but Al Franken denies the charges. The same as, how is it
actually,
open
Al
and shut?
Franken does not really. He said he did on the floor of the Senate, but he refuses to be judged by the Senate Ethics Committee. Why is that?
Well, no, he doesn't. He says that he'd be cleared by the Senate.
No, he said he'd be cleared, but he's resigning to avoid the Senate Ethics Committee, I thought.
He is. He feels it, well, because his own party is abandoned.
Don't you get tired of being a mouthpiece? Here I am trying to look at each one of these cases. I'm laying out exactly what I see. Tell me, sir, that photograph you see where Leanne Tweeden says he did, in fact, grab her breast, what do you see there in that photograph?
I'll tell you what I see in that photograph.
Yeah, what do you see?
I see a very, very stupid high school prank of a guy taking a stupid picture on that photograph. And
but
so
you see, sir,
no,
not everybody else, maybe in your family, but not in mine. Do you have a daughter, sir?
I do. I have a daughter and a son.
Okay, I didn't ask you about your son, but you do have a daughter.
Let me just say something.
And if she, no, I'm educating you because you sound like a schmo. If your daughter's in an airplane and she's asleep, and some guy comes up and even pretends to put his hands on her breast, and a photograph is taken of that. Is that a high school prank to you?
But no, it's not. But you're going off.
Oh, I thought you just said it was.
Franken denies the allegation.
He can't deny the photograph, genius. He cannot deny the photograph. A photograph of him, she says, putting his hands on her breast. He does not deny it's him. He does not deny that she. And even if he's pretending to put his hands on her breasts. Do you know something? As a matter of fact, you know what assault is, sir? It's if somebody believes that there is a danger or a sexual abuse that is about to occur. Are you aware of that?
And I think
he doesn't care.
I think 18 women who accuse Trump are aware of it, too.
Why are you even bringing up Trump?
Because you can't play politics with...
All right, let's speak this way. Let's pretend we're in a court of law. Excuse me. I know your mind's wandering. I'm going to try and bring it back. If you wanted to debate Trump, we could have debated Trump. If we're focused on Al Franken, bringing up Trump is not a defense of Al Franken. That's politics. You just defended a photograph where United States, well, he is a senator now, but where a guy is grabbing the breasts of a woman. She says he grabbed her breasts. He claims he didn't grab them. He came close for just a picture, whatever. And your defense is Donald Trump.
I'm not.
Do you realize what an idiot you sound like?
I'm not defending either one, and I'm not an idiot.
So in other words, if some man grabs your daughter's breasts or has a picture of it, All he has to do is say, Donald Trump. And you'd say, you know what? He's right. Is that what you would do?
You're going off point.
Get off the air, you idiot. Not going anywhere. I'm unraveling your absurdity. One of the 3 fans of the Morning Joe Schmo, show, whatever it's called. Let's pick another, shall we, Mr. But any other disagreeers? Now let's get an intelligent, regular American. Go right ahead. The great KVOR, Ed, Colorado. How are you, sir?
Thanks for taking my call, Mark.
You bet.
Patriotic music in the city of Colorado Springs, where we have the Air Force Academy and NORAD,
yes,
and Fort Carson and Schriever.
Right.
My dad got a Burmese star in World War I, got mustard gas poisoning. My brother Ivan was on Her Majesty's ship, the Renown, in the Pacific. If it wasn't for the Americans showing up, he would have been put to the bottom of the ocean. I had 3 sisters in uniform, and I had myself and my brother in uniform. And I understand you don't take prayers on the air, but are you familiar with the exhortation?
All right, sir. The reason we don't take prayers on the air is because they take too long. And I don't believe in prayers on the air. I believe if people want to say prayers, they should say prayers. They can say it in a public forum. They can say them themselves. They can say it at church or something or whatever. But if I open the show, the prayers on the air, that's all we're going to get, prayers on the air. You understand?
The exhortation is not a prayer. Could I read
Well,
it?
you're the one who said prayers. You don't take prayers on the air.
Your screener.
What?
So could I read these 5 lines to you?
No, we're not going to read. But I want to tell you, I want to thank you and your family for your service, but we're not going to read 5 lines. I appreciate it. Next caller, Mr. Producer, till I get this damn phone screen working. What do you got? The great WRNN Michael, South Carolina. Go.
Hey, Mark, I just wanted to say hello and thanks for being you. And I really enjoyed
Well, I wanted to be somebody else, but I almost got arrested. No, go right ahead.
Thanks for not being that person, whoever you wanted to be.
Yes, exactly.
But I watched the war, footage every Pearl Harbor Day and all this World War II, and I'm thinking, who's going to fight our wars? These schmoes on the left, they won't even get up off the sofa. They have no. I mean, they're just crazy. I don't know why, but
we have some of the most wonderful men and women a country can ever produce. That's what we have, and we're not giving them the support that they need and deserve. Thank you for your call, brother. We'll be right back.
Talk back to your radio? Then you must be listening to Mark Levin. Pick up the phone and call 877-381-3811.
You see, here's the thing. People say, you're very mean to call. I'm really not. People tell the call screener not what they're going to say, but the topic of what they're going to discuss, so we can keep the show substantive, interesting, and so forth and so on. And so when they get through the call screener and they get to me, if they want to start reading stuff or going through family histories or something like that, which is fine perhaps at a different time, they haven't told the call screener actually what they were planning on doing. Now, I could run this show without a call screener, and then people pop in left and right, and we'll be talking about God knows what. Who knows? I don't even need to take callers. 3 hours to me with commercials, I can go on and on and on about 1,000 different things that fascinate me, and I would think fascinate you too. So that's why I may seem a little frustrated to you from time to time. It's nothing personal, and it's nothing personal with the caller. But it's important that if you're going to come on the program that you are truthful, maybe. Isn't that right, Mr. Producer? Am I getting that right? I think I am. I got to tell you, I'd pick my Casper mattress over every mattress I've ever had. It helps me get the best night's sleep, period. Once you try yours, you're going to love it. Switching to Casper is a no-brainer. It's a higher quality mattress at a more affordable price. I'm sleeping cool and comfortably every night, much better than on the old, overpriced mattress I used to have. Casper ships for free in a small, how did they do that, size box? They'll even pick it up and refund you everything if you don't love it. From its breakthrough design and superior quality to its packaging, it's no wonder Casper was named one of Fast Company's 50 most innovative businesses and brands of 2017. Put Casper to the test. They want you to put Casper to the test. You can do it without any risk. You can put it in your home for 100 nights. You can sleep on it, risk-free. And then if you like it, keep it. And I think you will. And if you don't like it, you can send it back. No cost to you. Go to Casper.com/Mark and use code MARK. That's Casper.com/Mark. Use code MARK for $50 towards the purchase of your mattress. It's a little more complicated now. That's Casper.com/Mark, code MARK. Terms and conditions apply. But I'll tell you one thing. If you do that, you're going to sleep beautifully, like you've never slept before. I can tell you that. Personal experience. Family members. Even Barney, they have one for dogs, and he loves it. It's his favorite. I've got like 2 or 3 beds out there for him. He sleeps on the Casper mattress at night. If he's not on the bed with me, well, he's also sleeping on a Casper mattress. How do you like that? It's true. All right, Daniel, Fairfield, Connecticut, Sirius Satellite. How are you, sir?
First of all, Mr. Levin, I just want to thank you. It's an honor speaking to you. I listen to you all the time, and you're a true patriot. And many of the concepts and precepts that I use my argument against the stupid lib, I've gotten from you.
Well, you're very kind. Thank you, brother.
And the other thing, I served in the Navy for 6 years, and in the Navy, we had nothing but honor. And what I told your call screeners, I want to tell you, and I'll part with this. The reason we're having these problems, there's no virtuous men left in the Senate, in the Congress, albeit Mike Lee, Rand Paul, and my great hero, Ted Cruz. If you had more men that acted like men with virtuous natures and dispositions, half of this crap we wouldn't go through. And I hope you have a wonderful
Don't hang up yet. First of all, I want to thank you. But virtue is a key. Virtue is something that is discussed throughout American history. Virtue is something discussed by the founders of this country and the framers of the Constitution. As a matter of fact, John Adams points it out. And even in my latest book, Rediscovering Americanism, I point out that liberty without virtue is not liberty. Liberty without virtue is anarchy. And you're quite right. This notion of being virtuous isn't even discussed. When you hear Mika Brzezinski, does she sound virtuous to you?
Sounds like a bumbling idiot.
Bumbling idiot and a hack, just like her soon-to-be husband. They don't really want to walk through these things and try and figure them out. It's who's wearing whose team's uniform. That's it. All right, my friend, excellent call, and I much appreciate it. All right, let's see who else we have here. No, I don't really care for those right now. All right, it is currently, what is it, 7:37 p.m. Eastern Time, and there's been no new report of a sexual harassment right now. That's a good thing, right? I'm sure they'll come out, though. Now, I want to swing back into something else we've been talking about. Oh, no, here he goes. No, I really want to do this. There was something that Donald Trump put out today that was actually quite brilliant. And that is these video clips of past presidents saying that they support Jerusalem as the capital of Israel. And I'm doing this because, as I have been observing media, Democrats, some Republicans, but phonies all, as I've been listening to them talk about how Trump's going to get us killed and he's going to get other people killed and he's going against custom and all the rest of it. It is important to remember what these other presidents have said, especially when they're running for office. So just take a listen to this montage respecting Clinton, Bush, and Obama during their first candidacies for president. Cut 7, go.
Jerusalem is still the capital of Israel and must remain an undivided city accessible to all.
As soon as I take office, I will begin the process of moving the United States ambassador to the city of Israel as chosen as its capital.
I continue to say that Jerusalem will be the capital of Israel, and I have said that before, and I will say it again.
They all lied. They all lied. They never intended to move the embassy. And you must recognize Jerusalem as the capital of Israel if you're going to move the embassy. Clinton lied. Bush 43 lied. and Obama lied. I mean, that's pretty compelling, don't you think? None of them had the guts to do what Trump did. None of them. Nikki Haley, who is the Jeane Kirkpatrick of our time, for those of us who remember her. Jeane Kirkpatrick at the UN today. Cut 8, go.
Israel, like all nations, has the right to determine its capital city. Jerusalem is the home of Israel's parliament, president, prime minister, Supreme Court, and many of its ministries. It is simple common sense that foreign embassies be located there. In virtually every country in the world, U.S. embassies are located in the host country's capital city. Israel should be no different. The United States took this step in full knowledge that it will raise questions and concerns. Our actions are intended to help advance the cause of peace.
She said more than that. Cut 9, go.
I will not let this moment pass without a comment about the United Nations itself. Over many years, the United Nations has outrageously been of the world's foremost centers of hostility towards Israel. The UN has done much more damage to the prospects for Middle East peace than to advance them. We will not be a party to that. The United States no longer stands by when Israel is unfairly attacked in the United Nations. And the United States will not be lectured to by countries that lack any credibility when it comes to treating both Israelis and Palestinians fairly. It is no coincidence that the historic peace agreements between Egypt and Israel and between Jordan and Israel were both signed on the White House lawn. If and when there's a historic peace agreement between Israelis and Palestinians, there's a good likelihood that it, too, will be signed on the White House lawn. Why is that? It's because the United States has credibility with both sides. Israel will never be, and should never be, bullied into an agreement by the United Nations or by any collection of countries that have proven their disregard for Israel's security.
Nikki Haley, you heard the president the other day. We played almost his entire speech. And I want to say this as a Jewish person. Donald Trump has done more for the state of Israel than any Jewish Democrat in the United States Congress. Let me repeat that. Let me repeat it. It's Friday night. Many Jews are in temple right now. But I'm really focused on the liberals. Donald Trump, who you hate with such a passion and dismiss and look down upon, has done more for the state of Israel than any Democrat in the House or Senate, period, and any Democrat in the House or Senate who's Jewish. Donald Trump has done more for the state of Israel than AIPAC. That's right, I'll call him as I see him. He's done more for the state of Israel than AIPAC. He's done more for the state of Israel than any liberal Jewish person in the country. Even more than Congress. And he still won't receive a majority of vote of the Jewish population. Because the sad truth is, you can look at Catholicism too. You can look at sort of mainstream Protestantism too. The fact of the matter is, and we've talked about this many, many, many times, and I can say this as a Jew, that this radical liberalism, ready for this, is out of step with traditional Judaism. What did he say? Exactly what I said. Exactly what I said. Isn't it interesting that Bernie Sanders would surround himself with people who are hostile to Israel and yet supportive of the quote-unquote Palestinian cause? Did Bernie Sanders praise Donald Trump and his action? No. He has contempt for all of it. He was born a Jew. But Bernie is a Marxist first. Just being honest. He's a Marxist first. It is difficult, even though some people wrestle with it, maybe they accommodate their own mindset with it, it is difficult to believe in radical progressivism, which puts the state above all other things. The state above all other things. It's difficult to reconcile that with faith, whether you're a Jew, a Christian, or whatever. Because you don't put the state above everything else. The reason why we have a Supreme Court since the 1940s and others in this country, particularly on the left, who insist on wiping out religion from the public square, prayer from the school and so forth, isn't because they really fear the imposition of religious fundamentalism. It's absurd. It isn't even because they're defending those who have minority beliefs and they would argue shouldn't even have to deal with this because they're uncomfortable. It's because for them, government is omnipotent. Government is omnipotent. There is a reason why on so many occasions when Barack Obama would read the Declaration of Independence, he wasn't really reading the Declaration of Independence. He was excising out of the Declaration of Independence references to God. For the radical progressives, the focus must be on government. The focus must be on redistribution of wealth. The focus must be on all those things that have nothing to do with religion. Not only that, for Jews and Christians and others, there's been a reformation, a religious reformation. And our religions recognize the sanctity of the individual. Progressivism rejects the sanctity of the individual. The individual must conform to the iron fist of the progressive policy. Anyway, there's some food for you to chew on. I'll be right back.
Mark Levin.
You know, not many colleges can claim that they're 100% financially independent from both federal and state governments. In fact, I can think of only one college in the entire country that refuses government funding of every kind. Not one penny, and that would be Hillsdale College. Now, why do they do that? Because government money comes with strings, and Hillsdale refuses to have government bureaucrats dictate what and how they must teach or run on their campuses. From the beginning in 1844, Hillsdale has provided a world-class education that upholds America's founding principles and preserves the blessings of civil and religious liberty. Everything Hillsdale does, from the financial aid that 97% of its students receive to the completely free online courses it offers you, depends on generous donors who recognize the worth of independence. Financial freedom preserves the integrity and excellence of a Hillsdale liberal arts education, attracting the nation's brightest students in scores of fields of study, from music to biology to business. Hillsdale College teaches their students to pursue truth and defend liberty. You can learn more about Hillsdale College and how they help all of us become better, more independent citizens, and how you can help Hillsdale further freedom at levinforhillsdale.com, Levin for Hillsdale.com. All right, let us go. Nick, El Paso, Texas, the great KTSM, go.
Hello, Mark Levin. I just wanted to thank you for all your conservative news outlets that you put out. Being an active duty soldier here at Fort Bliss, you putting out the word of conservatism is a great help to all of us out here that are conservatives out here in El Paso, Texas.
Thank you, my friend. Appreciate that.
Of course. What I wanted to get to the issue of tonight was about why liberals are making a big deal about Jerusalem being the capital of Israel. I don't understand how when we give about $30 million a year to our greatest ally in the Middle East to control ISIS and fighting terrorism, that they want to bitch, whine, moan, and complain that Jerusalem is now all of a sudden the capital of Israel when it's...
Well, I need to correct you. Actually, Iran is the recipient of the most money from the United States.
Okay, well, I'm sorry, Mr. Levin, I got my information wrong.
$150 billion. Now, not all of it is from us, but we released an enormous amount of money, and we made an enormous amount of money available to them when we lifted sanctions. So I would argue that Iran is the biggest recipient of funds from the United States, public and private, by far, multiple-fold. But anyway, go right ahead. I appreciate it.
I just don't understand how liberals can say, oh, it's a bad thing, and like the Bernie Sanders, the Hillary Clintons, and all the fucking liberals of the world, oh, we shouldn't have Jerusalem as capital.
I'll tell you why, and I'm going to be perfectly honest about this. Anything Trump does, they're going to oppose. They hate him with such a passion. That's the first point. The second point is this. The Democrat Party more and more is relying, I'm just being honest with you, is relying on anti-Israel elements. Including waves and waves of immigration into this country from Arab and Muslim communities. Did I offend somebody with that? It's just true. And so you actually find something that's ironic and odd. You have, in many cases, liberal Jews who claim to support Israel voting in the same coalition for the Democrats with Arabs and Muslims and Palestinians who do not. And by the way, I'm not saying every single one. I'm just making a general point. I'll be right back.
He's here. Now, broadcasting from the underground command post, deep in the bowels of a hidden bunker, somewhere under the brick and steel of a nondescript building, we've once again made contact with our leader, Mark Levin.
Hello, everybody. Mark Levin here. Our number, 877-381-3811, 877-381-3811. Let me wrap this up. Is the State Department part of our government? Is it part of our government? Is it part of the executive branch? Or is it part, or is it a, put it this way, is it a department that represents foreign governments or our government? When the President of the United States makes a decision, is that a decision the State Department is supposed to enforce? I want you to listen to something. There's an acting Assistant Secretary of State by the name of David Satterfield. And he's being questioned by one of our favorites here, Matt Lee of the Associated Press. Hat tip to our buddies at Right Scoop. I want you to listen to this, seriously. Tell me if the State Department isn't a rogue operation. Cut 11, go.
What country is Jerusalem in?
The President recognized Jerusalem as the capital of the State of Israel.
Does that mean then that the U.S. government officially recognizes that Jerusalem, the municipality, lies within the State of Israel?
There has been no change in our policy with respect to consular practice or passport issuance at this time, which
is Jerusalem in Israel?
We recognize Jerusalem as the capital.
That is not my question.
We recognize Jerusalem as a capital of Israel. I'm not going to go on and on.
What about official documents? Will they say Jerusalem, Israel? What about the mailing address of the consulate, or the street address of the consulate?
I've already commented that on consular practice there is no change at this time. With respect to maps, we are, of course, examining that issue, and when we have a decision, we will announce it with respect to how we will treat Jerusalem for official USG-produced mapping purposes.
This is incredible. Listen to these people. The reason Matt Lee at AP is pressing this point, the President of the United States says that Jerusalem is the capital of Israel. Now, in order to have a capital, ladies and gentlemen, it has to be in your country. It's in your country. Two State Department spokespeople, Satterfield and Heather Nauert, refused to recognize that Jerusalem is in Israel. After the President of the United States just did what he did, which is a courageous thing. Furthermore, we have a consulate in Jerusalem, not an embassy. So we have an embarrassing situation here. The consular in Israel, in many respects, has more say-so than the ambassador in Israel from the United States, which is appalling. The President's trying to correct that. The State Department is resisting it. Then there are the documents and so forth, the official documents. Will they recognize Jerusalem as being in Israel? No, apparently. Not right now. They're having to analyze the situation over there at the State Department. What about the maps? Will Jerusalem be shown as the capital of Israel and in Israel when it comes to our maps? Well, we're looking at that. We're not so sure. And, of course, Rex Tillerson, who I've always had nothing but, I find him to be buffoonish, and I find him to be really off the reservation in so many respects. He's sort of a slow-talking, slightly overweight James Baker, and I was no fan of his either when he was Secretary of State. But it would appear we have a State Department that is a rogue operation. The State Department represents the UN, represents the Palestinians and the other Arabs, represents the Muslim countries, represents the European countries, but apparently doesn't represent our country. Now here's the concern, you see. The President has directed that the State Department will do what has to be done to move and build the embassy in Jerusalem, from engineers and architects and on and on and on and on. Do these people sound like they're in a hurry to do that? Or do these people sound like they're going to try and wait out this administration and hopefully get a left-wing Democrat administration which will put the kibosh on this? That's a big deal, don't you think? So the acting Assistant Secretary David Satterfield and a spokeswoman, Heather Nauert, they won't acknowledge that Jerusalem's in Israel. Now, maybe they haven't been to Israel. Maybe they haven't been there. I mean, you know how offensive this is? That's saying Washington's not in America. Now, some of us wish, but it is. That Washington is not in America. And this issue, by the way, isn't a 70-year-old issue. As our buddy Daniel Horowitz points out at Conservative Review, he's wrote a brilliant piece, as he always does, our buddy Daniel Horowitz. He said the U.S. initially recognized the Jewish people's right to sovereignty over the entirety of the land west of the Jordan River, including Jerusalem, 95 years ago. You're not going to hear this on TV, so stick with me. But endless threats of the Arab Street has deterred them from following through with this commitment until President Trump. The fact that he's willing to break the same old paradigm of putting Arab Street concerns above our interests and doing what's right is a very positive quality that will hopefully bear fruit on other foreign and domestic policies as well. There never was an Arab-Palestinian state in the Holy Land, and all the land west of the Jordan River was originally earmarked for the Jewish state under the Balfour Declaration exactly 100 years ago. That plan was adopted by the Allied powers and the League of Nations in 1920 and 1922. On September 21, 1922, President Warren Harding signed H.J. Resolution, the House Resolution 322, which formally adopted the mandate for Palestine as official U.S. policy. The resolution recognized Jewish dominion over all of Palestine. Now you know why the Arabs in the area call themselves Palestinians. So you think they're indigenous to Palestine. The resolution recognized Jewish dominion over all of Palestine, which was a Jewish, not Arab term, hearkening back to the days of Roman Emperor Hadrian. So long as they recognize the civil and religious rights of Christian and all other non-Jewish communities and ensure that the holy places and religious buildings and sites in Palestine shall be adequately protected. This is 1922. The committee reported from the House Foreign Affairs Committee, recognized the God-given rights to the land and the fact that Jews were already rehabilitating the conditions of the people living there from the wanton and deplorable policy of the desolation systematically carried out by its rulers, the Turks, for centuries. And then we have this slob, this pig, this dictator, Erdogan of Turkey, who's trashing the United States, trashing Christians, trashing Jews, trashing Israel. He of the old notion of the Ottoman Empire. Observe the report of the House Foreign Affairs Committee back in the 20s. What was once the land of milk and honey has become, through misrule and oppression, a devastated and sparsely settled land. So, when the Turks controlled the so-called West Bank, they destroyed it. When the Jordanians controlled Jerusalem, they destroyed it. It's quite evident that the House Committee blamed the Turks for the dysfunction and oppression, and viewed the creation of the Jewish state not just as a biblical fulfillment and a place of refuge for persecuted European Jews, but as the only means of preserving democratic rights for everyone. Want to hear more? This is interesting. Christians, Jews, Muslims, whomever. Congressman Frank Appleby, Republican, New Jersey, spoke on the floor and noted that for over 2,000 years, no other nation or people claimed the land as their homeland. Despite the prevailing isolationist sentiment among the politicians during that era, they unanimously and passionately spoke of the need to recognize Palestine as the land of the Jews for the purposes of justice, liberty, and humanity. And you can read the entire congressional record if you wish. During consideration of the resolution on the House floor on June 30, Representative Walter Chandler, Republican, New York, delivered a lengthy and riveting speech summing up the purpose and background of the resolution. And I might add, these are all Gentiles. These are all Christians. His speech makes it clear that the intent was to always have one state controlled by Jews, and that it was universally understood the Jewish government would be better for all sides in terms of democratic values, and that a few jihadist agitators were seeking to undermine the agreement. Sound familiar? He predicted that Jerusalem would be the seat of the Jewish government. His words were quite prophetic and ominous. Chandler directly addressed the smattering of the Arabs living in the area. Here's what he said about that. That the Arabs shall be permitted to remain in Palestine under Jewish government and domination, and with their civil and religious rights guaranteed to them through the British mandate and under the terms of the Balfour Declaration. That if they will not consent to Jewish government and domination, they shall be required to sell their lands at a just valuation and retire into the Arab territory, which has been assigned to them by the League of Nations and the general reconstruction of the countries of the East. And that if they will not consent to Jewish government and domination under conditions of right and justice, or to sell their lands at a just valuation and to retire in their own countries, they shall be driven from Palestine by force. Representative Walter M. Chandler, Republican, New York. So it was clear that nobody ever intended to establish any other entity governing this entire area. Chandler prophetically noted that the Arabs in Palestine should be and would be happy and content under the present government of that country if it were not for the Turks and the Arab agitators who travel around over the land stirring up trouble, I'm quoting him, by making false representations concerning the true character of the Zionist movement. This is what Chandler said. And that's what happened. For the next 95 years, the Arab agitators waged jihad, and every modern American president has cowered in the face of jihad. The entire purpose of the agreement on Palestine was to give the land only to the entity that would protect the holy sites and civil rights. Yet global elites here and abroad rewarded Arabs for violating the agreement. Violence indeed does pay and did pay off for the jihadists. Commensurate with every threat of violence was a demand that Jews pay tribute in the form of blood or surrender. After 95 years, President Trump has righted a wrong and restored the original intent of a unanimous body of Congress in 1922. 1922. Although he promised to move the embassy, it's clear that the State Department will undermine him, as you just heard. and his own appointees, Secretary of State Rex Tillerson and Secretary of Defense James Mattis, opposed even Trump recognizing Jerusalem as the capital of Israel and making the announcement. Opposed even that. Opposed even that. Mr. Producer, one more time. Cut 11, go.
What country is Jerusalem in?
The president recognized Jerusalem as the capital of the state of Israel.
Does that mean then that the U.S. government officially recognizes that Jerusalem, the municipality, lies within the state of Israel?
There has been no change in our policy with respect to consular practice or passport issuance at this time, which is
Jerusalem in Israel?
We recognize Jerusalem as the capital.
That is not my question.
We recognize Jerusalem as a capital of Israel. I'm not going to go on and on.
What about official documents? Will they say Jerusalem, Israel? What about the mailing address of the consulate, or the street address of the consulate?
I've already commented that on consular practice there is no change at this time. With respect to maps, we are, of course, examining that issue, and when we have a decision, we will announce it with respect to how we will treat Jerusalem for official USG-produced mapping purposes.
You know, I want to mention the wonderful economic news, which probably isn't getting the attention it deserves. 228,000 jobs added, 33,000 of which in manufacturing. In manufacturing. Hispanic unemployment, as the government tracks this, the lowest since it's ever been recorded. Unemployment is at a 17-year low. Consumer confidence is at a 17-year high. The gross domestic product, the economy, grew at 3.3% last quarter. Obama never hit 3%. Pretty incredible, isn't it? I should note, all of this wonderful economic news occurred without any new major tariffs. You aware of that, Mr. Producer? All this wonderful new economic news occurred even with NAFTA in place. Because, ladies and gentlemen, growth isn't created by tariffs. Growth is killed by tariffs. NAFTA isn't destroying jobs. NAFTA is eliminating trade barriers. NAFTA was Ronald Reagan's idea. The president who created the greatest growth, the most jobs, the greatest new businesses of any president in American history. So we have 228,000 new jobs created, or added, 33,000 of which are in manufacturing. Hispanic unemployment the lowest ever since recorded. Unemployment at a 17-year low. Consumer confidence at a 17-year high. 3.3% GDP growth without scrapping NAFTA and without new major tariffs. Now, what's going to happen is the Republicans are going to pass a tax bill at some point, which will massively increase taxes on some people, massively reduce taxes for some people, particularly people at the lower end, a very, very significant number of new no tax-paying Americans, which is extremely unhealthy for a society when 50% of the population pays no taxes, no federal income taxes at all. There'll be significant corporate income tax cuts from 35 to 20%, give or take. So the business side will be taken care of. The individual side is a mess. To be messing around with people's homes, to be messing around with people's budgets by taking away or significantly capping the home property tax deduction or the state income tax deduction, by pretending you're attacking blue states when in fact you're attacking individuals, is really unconscionable. As I said the other day, if they were really serious about this, using the tax code to attack blue states and reward red states, tell me, why is the reduction in the corporate income tax 35 to 20% across the board? Why aren't they punishing the companies that are in blue states? Why don't they say, we will reduce corporate income taxes 35 to 20%, where there are most companies in red states, and we'll figure out how to define that. And we won't reduce it at all. In fact, we'll increase it for companies that are in blue states. Well, is that even constitutional? Answer, no. So how is it? How is it that get away with their propaganda saying, oh, we're going to, taxes of people blue states, you're going to have to pressure the blue states. That is an outrageous distraction for a massive tax increase. Everybody should get a tax reduction, particularly those who pay the most. Everybody should get a tax deduction across the board, all rates, but they're not doing that. So maybe we have 3.3% GDP growth. Let me tell you something. If these tax cuts were done the right way, we'd have 7-8% growth. 7-8% growth the way we did under Reagan. I'll be right back.
Mark Levin.
Levin Show, where we create the talking points. Call in now, 877-381-3811.
If you haven't finished shopping for that perfect gift for your friends and family, we've got the perfect gift idea for you over at crtv.com. Through Christmas, we've created some limited edition holiday mugs featuring your favorite show hosts on CRTV, like me and Levin TV. It's your chance to get my mug on your mug. We wanted to say a special thank you to those who are signing up to support what we're doing over at CRTV, and we couldn't do it without you. There's never been a better time to get CRTV, and if you've already joined, you can gift a CRTV subscription to your friends and family. Everybody could use a little bit more of the truth, don't you think? And conservative principles. And a little less from the liberal media, that's for sure. This is the perfect time. Give us a call today. It's Friday evening. Lock her in, baby. 844-LEVIN-TV, 844-LEVIN-TV. Mention promo code HOLIDAY. That's promo code HOLIDAY, so you can get your free Levin TV mug. Or choose from any of the other great hosts that we have at CRTV. Again, that's 844-LEVIN-TV, 844-LEVIN-TV, or visit levintv.com. You can watch Levin TV and the other programs on your iPhone, on your Android, on your laptop, on your iPad, on your smart TV. On your PC, just on and on and on. It's almost, I remember as a kid these comic books and comic series about Dick Tracy watching TV on his watch. Well, we're pretty much there, aren't we? And you can watch me there, too. Anyway, I know you'll enjoy it. By the way, already doing a lot of thinking about my new Fox show. Well, I believe is tentatively scheduled to start the last Sunday in February. Oh, yeah. 10 p.m. Eastern Time, Sunday, on Fox. Been doing a lot of thinking about that. And by the way, as you're thinking about gifts, I find that books are the best gifts, or certainly among the best gifts. They're very well priced. And there's a lot of information in them. And for kids, a lot of joy in them. I hope you'll check out my Father Jack's books. All you have to do is go to Amazon.com, type in Jack Levin, Levin, and the various books will pop up. And they are great books on Gettysburg Address, Lincoln's Gettysburg Address, Lincoln's Second Inaugural Address, Washington's Crossing, his book on Spot, which is the original Spot book for little kids, little kids, and, of course, his Proverbs book, which I find to be outstanding. So it covers his books, really, very, very young children to young teenagers. And if you have a mind, Rediscovering Americanism. It's up there on Amazon.com. It keeps plugging along. Soon it'll be paperback. So if you want to get a hardback copy for Christmas or Hanukkah, now's the time to do it. And it really is, I think, a book that will reveal so much to you. When I write these books, I think about the reader. I think about you. So I really think for the holidays, these books are great, great gifts. So is a CRTV subscription. I love people who say, well, you're always hawking things. Look, Levin TV, I spend 5 hours a day on Levin TV. I spend every weekend and every night writing my books when I am writing books. This is what I do. This is what I'm about. I'm in the communication business. I'm not into slapstick. I'm not a lounge act. I'm not Henny Youngman on radio cracking jokes every 3 seconds. This is what I do. They're cerebral. They're substantive. I think they're important. We're trying to save the country. We're trying to build the republic back up. And I'm trying to find every media platform I can. And in the case of Fox, they have asked me to do a show, and I couldn't be happier to do it. So all's good. People ask me, how do we turn around the country? Information to begin with. Ideas to begin with. I told you there was a great philosopher. His name was Berlin, Isaiah Berlin. And I mentioned him prominently in my latest book, Rediscovering Americanism. And Isaiah Berlin writes about negative liberty, positive liberty, and so forth and so on. But one of the things he says has stuck with me, and I've repeated it a few times to you. And he said this: if you leave the battle of ideas to academia and intellectuals, you will lose your liberty. If you leave the battle of ideas to intellectuals and academics, you will lose your liberty. We must engage in the battle of ideas, because in the end, that will determine what kind of a country you live in. Progressivism is an ideology. It's an idea. Conservatism is a philosophy that takes into consideration the human experience. It's an idea. It's a reality, too. That's the big battle, among others. That's the battle. And the left knows this. This is why they have monopolized teaching in our public schools for the most part, and in our colleges and universities. And we've got to do something about this. And I've been thinking about it and thinking about it myself. What can we do? What should we do? You may recall Landmark Legal Foundation, where I was president, but I'm not anymore. The wonderful Pete Hutchison is president. I'm the chairman. We were at the forefront of the school choice movement. But we need to do more. If we don't win the battle of ideas, we don't win. This is why I get so frustrated with Republicans in Congress when they use the language of the left in class warfare when it comes to tax cuts. Hey, don't worry, we got the rich, and then we'll give this. No. We're about liberty. We're about prosperity. We're about creating opportunity, creating jobs. We're about private property rights. We're about all these things. Not about classes of people where we allow the government to create these fictions, these economic classes, and they stick us in them, and we're supposed to, yes, I'm in the middle class. Well, why are we celebrating that? You want to be as successful as possible. You don't need a label by the government or politicians or hacks. You don't want to be labeled like that. I'm in the lower middle class. No. You're an American. We can keep this country free. If we can keep our capitalist system, you can make what you want to make, or try to make what you want to make, and certainly make of yourself what you want to make. You'll fail many times, but you'll succeed many times. They create this nomenclature so you even have mental barriers to success. In the lower middle class, get that guy, the rich one, get him. All that is destructive and anti-success and anti-individual. So this guy, Isaiah Berlin, he's in Rediscovering Americanism, but you can Google his name too. Just outstanding. And then there was a gentleman who followed him. He's still alive. He's originally from Ireland. He's a professor too. Really good. His name's Pettit. These are names you've never heard of before. This is the sort of thing I talk about on Levin TV and I want to do on the Fox show. Pettit. He took Berlin a little step further. I got into this one night. I felt it was fascinating. Everybody else is probably... More sexual harassment. Come on. Who's next? Who's up? Who's next? All right, let's take a call. Victor in Katy, Texas, Sirius Satellite. How are you, Victor?
I'm doing well, Mark. It's an honor to speak with you, sir.
You too. Thank you. How do you pronounce your town?
Katy.
I'm sorry. Katy. Got it.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, no, Mark, I've been listening to your comments, and I am very happy that the president has declared Jerusalem as the capital of Israel. I mean, this is something that it's a no-brainer. You know, I'm a Christian, and anyone, I'm by no means a biblical scholar, but anyone who reads the Old and New Testaments, it's a no-brainer. You know, Jerusalem has always been the focal point of all the Jewish people. Everything, the temple was there. Everything was always done there. Correct. So I'm wholeheartedly supporting him. And
by the way, the Quran. How many times does the Quran mention Jerusalem?
I don't know for a fact, but many a times, I'm certain.
Not once.
Oh, really?
Not once. You know, the second temple. I'm not even talking about the first temple. The second temple destroyed by the Romans. Muhammad wasn't even born till almost 500 years after the second temple.
I know.
You aware of that?
There. No question. But if you know, when you read the New Testament, it speaks about Jesus, and he always goes to Jerusalem, and you know, it's very clear to me.
Jesus was in Jerusalem. As a matter of fact, his body was brought to Jerusalem, right?
Exactly.
The Church of the Holy Sepulchre.
Right.
Which is defended by the Israeli government against, at one point, the Palestinians took the church and kidnapped people within the church.
Yeah, no, I'm just, you know.
How about Bethlehem? What's Bethlehem to the Christian religion?
Yeah, I'm in total agreement, you know, with...
No, but for the whole country, what is Bethlehem to the Christian religion? It's important, is it not?
Clearly, yes, of course, it's the birth of our Savior.
Yes, and guess what? Almost a majority of the population there is now Palestinian, and the Palestinians control the city.
Yeah, I know.
Ever hear of the city Hebron? Hebron? That's the second most important city in Israel. Hebron. Does that sound like Hebrew to you, Hebron?
No, it does not.
Well, it is. Hebron, H-E-B-R. Hebrew, Hebrew. Second most important city. The Palestinians claim to control that city, too. Anyway, sir, I have to go. I really do appreciate your call. Thank you. All right, it's Friday already. Why does it feel like Thursday? You know, friends, it's hard to believe that 2017 is almost over. I mean, really, a couple of weeks. Time doesn't stand still, so don't waste another minute. Join AMAC right now. AMAC is the Association of Mature American Citizens. It's the leading conservative voice for Americans age 50 and up, and they are resolved to continue their mission to restore America's moral compass, to make America a better place for our children, and to save America from the left. As an AMAC member, you'll also gain access to a wide variety of exclusive benefits and discounts that'll help you save a lot of money. From car insurance, Medicare plans, to discounts on hotels and cars and rentals and more. AMAC is the organization to join. A voice for conservatives in Washington. Exceptional benefits. What's not to love about all that? Join AMAC right now. It's simple. www.amac.us. That's www.amac.us. Or give them a call. Their toll-free number, 888-262-2006. That's 888-262-2006. The Association of Mature American Citizens. The benefits are great, but the cause is even greater. Now's the perfect time to join. Join AMAC right now. I'll be right back. Let's slip a call in here. Josh, Richmond Hill, Georgia, the great WTKS. Go.
First off, it's a pleasure, and congrats on the new Fox show.
Thank you.
So I'm a tail end of a millennials, conservative Republican, and I'm Jewish as well. But the whole thing of this embassy thing does not upset me as that. It's just this was signed. The embassy was supposed to be moved back in 1995, and it's to my understanding all the past presidents have just been signing waivers. So if anything, we should be congratulating President Trump for finally getting something done that past presidents have just passed on.
Mm-hmm.
And yet
that's right. They bash him, and, the vote, my understanding is in the Senate on that 1995 statute was 90-0. But in any event, it had massive bipartisan support.
We shouldn't have to debate about recognizing that as even a piece of Israel. That is the decision for the Israelis, and we've always known that.
Yeah, but that's now the position apparently of the State Department is it's not part of Israel because they won't state that it is. I mean, this is incredible. The Department of State under Rex Tillerson is defying the President of the United States.
Well, and I guess my question for you, another one would be: is the State Department in such disarray because of Hillary Clinton used to run it, or is Tillerson just not doing it?
No, I think because Rex Tillerson doesn't put Trump supporters and conservatives in there. That's why. Thank you for your call, my friend. Much appreciated. All right, ladies and gentlemen, Friday. Over and the weekend begins right now. We salute our armed forces, police officers, firefighters, and emergency personnel. Good night, Spritey. Good night, Griffey. Good night, Pepsi. Good night, Smokey. Good night, Zelda. Good night, all my beautiful dogs. Ladies and gentlemen, get Al-Qaeda. Get Hezbollah. Get Hamas. Get all those you-know-whats. Have a wonderful weekend. I'll see you right here on Monday. God bless and be safe.